Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse episode Thor 437. It's a DC Comics podcast. We get together to talk about DC books. I am Peter and I'm joined as always by Matt.
There's no Thor. However, there are things that tie to Thor in the Asgardian mythology. Asgardian, as if that's a real place. Norse mythology later in Silent Night. So, yes.
Yes, welcome everyone. This DC Comics podcast. Coming up on this week's show, we have Action Comics 1079, Batman and Robin 16, Green Lantern 18, the Superwoman Special issue 1, Batman Dark Patterns issue 1. Matt still read Batman Santa Claus Silent Returns issue 3. I did not because I'm here for the next 2 weeks and there's like 13 books on both weeks, and I decided that was the one that, well, I'm enjoying it well enough. It's the most fluffy one, so I'm just not going to continue because I've got too many to read in the next couple of weeks. But I do have 2 Patreon books this week. I'm getting a couple of them done this week because the next 2 weeks are hell. So I'm going to be talking about American Vampire 1976 issue 3 and Batman and the Outsiders issue 20. So that's what's coming up on today's show. Now, I said I'll be here the next 2 weeks, which implies that Matt won't be here the next 2 weeks. Well, he's actually here the second week. He's only gone next week. I've said this in the most confusing way possible, but I'll say this at the top of the show just in case no one's here at the end to hear it, because some people click off a bit too soon, even though there's important things being said right up until the very last second of the show.
So my teachers used to say that I don't dismiss you, the bell, or I dismiss you, the bell doesn't dismiss you. That was just your version of that.
I suppose so. But yeah, Matt is away on a Christmas trip next week during the regular recording time. So amazingly, somehow, the ginger, Connor, will be back. However, this is the part that I need to warn you about, because it being Connor here instead is not really that big a deal in terms of like you're listening to the show. However, the show will not be out on the regular day. It will be late. The only day that Connor could record was a couple of days later. So I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, next episode of this show will not come out until Christmas Day, which is weird, but you're just going to have to roll with it.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you can't record until it's like Christmas Eve before you can record, so... That's his first day off. He's busy all that weekend.
I know. Oh my god.
So
okay.
that's as soon as we could do it. So we're actually recording on Christmas Eve. I'm working on Christmas Eve, and then the show will be out on Christmas Day. So
God bless us, everyone.
Yeah, weird. You know, it's just Christmas. It's weird. Timing gets weird.
And then you have to read another 12 books to record the next Saturday.
It's a very busy week of comic book reading. I mean, I could, I suppose, read all of the first batch of books like at the weekend at the normal time, but I know I'm not going to. I'm going to wait until Christmas Eve morning and then read 12 books because I'm a nut job. Because that's just how I process things.
I'm going to have to try to read 12 books in between going to Universal Studios. So, you know, it'll be fine. It'll be fine.
On the upside, Matt, you don't have to necessarily catch up in all that week you miss for the next week. There's a few of them you would, but you could leave some of them until the next issue is going to come out if you really wanted to. True,
but I like to keep a schedule. I thought that for years. We were trying to just do I'm going to go with the flow. No, I am like a artificial reef. I cannot go with the flow. I disrupt the flow. I need order. So
yeah. Just to reiterate, the next 2 weeks are absurd for the number of comics, which is why I just didn't bother reading the Santa Claus book.
And here's the thing. If I was complaining about this to a friend, if DC just would stop putting out so many things I want to read, that'd be nice. Can we go back to the days where we were just complaining about DDO?
Oh no! I mean, no. To be clear, it's a good problem, but that's why something that's just okay, like the Santa Claus book, is the first to go. It's like, well, there's too many other more interesting things to read right now.
I remember when we were discussing, like, maybe we'll open it up to some other books, because there was a Bleak While post, and it was probably a little bit to do with the pandemic, that there wasn't like a lot of books weekly we wanted to read. This is
That's right, yeah. There were
Echo.
We were down to like 4 or 5 a week, and it was never going above that. To the point where I said, maybe we could do a couple of non-DC books every week that we want to talk about. And of course, another year or two later, and we're struggling to keep up with the number of DC are putting out. But I know it's going to go down again, because it always happens. It's always, you know, it's a ebb and flow.
It is. And so, but yeah, no, I need to stay up to date with certain books, especially the Tom King ones, because they are so wordy that if I leave them until, right before the next one's drop, it's not going to be good. Then I'm drowning in word count, and it doesn't help me at all.
Oh, sure, yeah. So, and yeah, it's just a busy release schedule for the most part, for the next little while. If I look at, I'm just curious to see if it's a little bit better in the same weeks the following month, and not by much. It looks like it's pretty similar, maybe a book or two less, but still in the double digits.
We know something like Jenny Sparks is falling off soon, right? So that won't be there.
Oh yeah, but I looked and it's still like 11 books on week 3 next month. So yeah, don't get hoping that it's going to be much quieter just because we're in the new year. That's all I'm saying.
Decisions might need to be made. We might have to. I might have to start limiting my books, just because time wise, it's damn near impossible.
Every time you say that, you don't do it. So I'm not. No one take that with any seriousness.
Are you calling the bluff? I do. As I tell people at work, I exist out of spite. That said, it's hard to find.
That's a good point. Okay, in that case, I'll say, Matt, there's no way you can keep up with all these books.
I'll show you.
You're such a loser. You can never do that.
Man, I'll show you.
I bet you will. I was hoping we'd have solicits this week, just because it's the quieter week, so it would make more sense. However, apparently they're not coming till next week, so that is a thing. There's a little bit of news, but we'll get to that after the first thing, which is the list formerly known as the ComiXology Top 10, or the Kindle rankings as it's currently known, I guess. One day I'll decide on a proper intro for that, but hey, let's see what's ranked right now in the Kindle comic store. Matt, what's your guess for number 1?
I'm going to guess, let's see, there's a Spider-Man book, there's an Ultimate book, there's an X-Men book, Top DC. I'm going to guess Uncanny X-Men 7.
That is incorrect.
Oh, okay. Oh, there's also, no, that's a special. Is it Transformers?
That is incorrect.
Wow. All right. One more go. Let's go with Action Comics.
That is also incorrect.
Wow.
Yep. Which is it? Number 1 is Ultimate Universe 1 Year In.
That's what I said. That's the special. Oh, man. I really didn't think. It's got a cool Steranko-esque cover, but I did not think that would be number 1.
Yeah. I surprising to me as well. Interestingly, number 2 is Uncanny X-Men. And number 3 is Transformers. So
God damn it.
You were spitting in the right area, but not quite there. Number 4 is the Superwoman special. Which is actually somewhat surprising. 5 is Storm. 6 is Phoenix. Number 7 is Laura Kinney Wolverine. So that's a new book that's launched.
She's just Wolverine.
Yeah, but there's another Wolverine roundabout, so they have to specify.
It's true.
Yeah. Number 8 is Green Lantern. Number 9 is Action Comics, and number 10 is Amazing Spider-Man. So Marvel did somewhat dominate the top 10 this week. Yeah. Lot of heavy hitters.
They just seem like they have a lot more books out there too. Looking at like Comic Geeks.
I mean, that's probably true. Especially since DC have got all of their books coming out in the next 2 weeks. So
exactly. Yeah. It's just they took advantage of it.
Honestly, the surprise there for me is Superwoman's special going so high. Not because of any other reason, other than just that specials don't tend to do that well. I know it's an issue 1 technically, but it's a one shot, and I don't think one shots tend to. I don't know. Is there some reason why this? Like, is Superman selling this well? That seems to be better than Superman usually ranks.
On League of Comic Geeks, on the most pulled, it comes in at like 18th.
Yeah.
So
you can't really read into that though, because it's an issue 1. Issue 1s always do worse than League of Comic Geeks because no one's pulling it yet.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, I had to go real deep for that. But like Ultimate Universe 1 year in, right? That was up near the top. So, and that's number 1 as well. So, and same with Wolverine with Laura Kinney. That's above it, not by much, but still. But yeah, no, I sometimes I wish they would just, would be like having a John Stewart Green Lantern number 1. And it's like, you guys' job is to be creative. You can't come up with a creative title. Give her something, some type of subtitle, best there is. something along the lines.
And be careful what you wish for, because you might get something stupid like Lady Wolverine or something like that.
Yeah. This is Tom Taylor's line. No, that's Wolverine. I don't know who the old guy is, but Laura's Wolverine. And it always upset the people you think it was going to upset the most.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I like Erica Schultz writing, because that's who's on it, but I will say that even if I was tempted to read it because I like Laura as a character, I have not read a Marvel book in like 3 years at this point, and I have no idea what the world status quo is like or anything.
All I know is something happened and there's a Spider-Man with Nightcrawler powers, and it has something to do with the island and Apocalypse and Mr. Sinister. And I had a friend on Free Comic Day try to explain it all to me, and it went from one ear, not the other.
Yeah.
So fun times.
Yeah. As far as anything else goes, Dark Patterns is number 11, so that's just outside the top 10. Batman and Robin's 15, and that's Oh, and Vampires was 13 in between those two. So,
all right.
But that's kind of it for the notable stuff. There was a new Alien book, but they keep pumping out these Alien minis. I can't even keep up with them. Alien Paradiso is here. I didn't realize we were doing a crossover with Alien and Cinema Paradiso, which I do like that movie. It's not something that I'd put on a list of things to cross over with Alien, though.
Just aliens wrecking Italy.
Destroying the art form of kino, of cinema.
Yeah.
There.
Just judging by some people's reactions to Romulus, you would feel that, the Fox is doing that enough.
I mean, it's much, much better than the last couple before that, so...
True. I'm just talking about some of the reactions. There's some people I read that, they were going about it like it was a personal insult. And I was like, yes, there are things that I found problematic, but I had a good time in the theater in the moment. So, yeah, it was just very funny when he said destroying the art that is cinema.
Yeah, Covenant is way worse. Like, we're not even having that conversation.
No.
Covenant is a trash
good old
fire
Ridley.
of a movie.
But you know what? If Ridley wants to set his art on fire, he should be allowed to.
Not if I have to sit through it. I also had to sit through Gladiator 2 recently, so Ridley's not exactly in my good graces right now.
Well, now I know how you felt about that one.
Yeah. There's like half of an okay sequel, and then it just goes off a cliff.
Our friend Dan, who's usually very high on going to the movies, when I had the opportunity to go on Black Friday but chose not to, I'm like, I'm gonna watch Days of Thunder instead. He responded that I made the better choice. And I didn't like Days of Thunder that much. Like, it's fine.
It's better than Top Gun. It's better than Top Gun. I'm saying it now.
No, it is not.
It is way better than Top Gun.
No way.
Top Gun is so overrated. I'm fighting this fight.
Oh my god, I love Pete Mitchell way more than I liked that. I can't even remember his name right now, so I've only seen it once.
Yeah, well, Top Gun doesn't have Tom Cruise and Michael Rooker having a wheelchair race, okay? So
you're very correct. It does not. And Rooker is the low key best part of that movie.
Top Gun's one of those movies that it had such a mystique and pop culture around it that when I finally saw it in my 20s, I went, "Is that it? What's so special about it? Like like the plot is nothing, the romance is whatever. It's like a mediocre movie."
You sound like Ashley, because when we watched Top Gun, she hadn't watched it as an adult. So when we watched it before Top Gun Maverick, she goes, "Why do you like this?"
It's a good question. So overrated.
Yeah. Here's the thing though. I've been watching it since before I can remember, right? When it's on TV. I have a lot of fondness for it. I had the story with Goose. I really love. Plus, I just like jets. I don't care about race cars that much, I
don't care about jets or race cars. They're both irrelevant to me.
Yeah, but I think jets are cool. Therefore, I have bias.
No. Days of Thunder's better, so it's a better movie than Top Gun.
I don't think so.
I will stand by this.
It does have Michael Rooker. I'll take Michael Rooker over what's his name? Tom Berenger.
At least there's a competition that it's building up to that he's trying to win, as opposed to Top Gun. We're just all of a sudden in third act. Oh, by the way, we're doing something that's not a training thing anymore. We actually have a real thing to go do that's just out of nowhere.
We have to go fight the MiGs.
Oh dear, can you say that? What did you just say?
I said fight the MiGs. Those are the type of jets in Russia.
Okay.
Yes.
I didn't know what word meant. I was just, that sounds like you're saying something dodgy, Matt.
No. They're jets, I promise. Don't cancel me.
Oh dear. So yeah, Top Gun.
And you know what? You wouldn't have edited that. You'd have let me get canceled.
I would have played it at the start so people knew it was coming.
just with the comment just echo back through every so often. That takes a lot of editing though, but I feel like out of spite you would do it. And you know what? I applaud that.
Spite will see you through. If all else fails, spite will see you through.
Mild fuzz. Spite will see you through.
Dear. Point Break's overrated as well. Well, I'm honest.
I'm not going to disagree there.
Even the raw energy that is Gary Busey couldn't make Point Break more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm going to say. Patrick Swayze was shit. He was shit in everything I've ever seen him in, and I'm standing by that as well.
Oh, Bodie.
Roadhouse had all this online mystique. Boring as shit. Did nothing for me. Dirty Dancing didn't work for me either, but at least I accept I'm not the target audience of that. But still,
for that one, yeah.
But
you did not have the time of your life.
I did not have the time of my life. I had a good bag of peanuts during it. I don't know if I'd say they're the bag of peanuts of my life, but they were up there.
Bag of peanuts of my life.
Dear. That's it. I had to watch Attack of the Clones this past week.
Why?
Race. What did you why? That's always the answer, Matt. Whenever I say I've watched a really bad movie, that's usually the answer.
Yeah, but like, I don't know. Sometimes the more sociopathic members will make you, of the community, would have you watch that on a stream. So no. I don't know.
We hadn't done it on Ace yet, right? We're working through. We did Phantom Menace back in May, so we're doing Attack of the Clones. It's the Christmas Eve episode of the Atomic Cinema Experiment.
I will defend Star Wars against the types of people like Pete. I will not defend Attack of the Clones.
What do you mean the types of people like me? What does that mean?
I know not. So like, there are only certain people I will talk Star Wars with. Like even people that disagree with whatever. You're not one of them because I feel there's a bias at this point, and it's almost a bit how much you don't like Star Wars.
I like the original trilogy plenty. I've said very nice things about those movies. Jedi's got some flaws. I do think there's a few things in Empire that are overrated, but generally speaking, it's a good trilogy.
Have you seen Solo yet?
No, we'll get to that. We'll get to that in the order of where it comes.
Oh, you guys are going chronological order?
No, order of release.
Okay.
Yeah, the originals were already done.
Okay.
Done.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I would never do it chronological. No, you've experienced them as they were made to be consumed.
That's where I am. That's how I believe to.
I mean, the actual recommendation is you watch the original trilogy, then stop and never watch any other Star Wars. That's my recommendation.
Well, then you miss out on Solo, a Star Wars story. Second greatest thing Ron Howard's ever created.
What? No, I'm not. Like, I've not seen it yet, but I know in my heart that this is a Kong Skull Island thing, where you are super positive about this movie, and I'm going to walk out of it and be like, that was like maybe a 6 at best. Like that is the vibe I'm getting from this movie.
Effect, though. I know that there's a type. There's the Kong Skull Island effect. I love it.
This Matt's being delusional. He's overrating something. This is the slot that it usually goes into.
Kong Skull Island, Abigail, Solo. What are some others, guys? Weigh in. Hit us up on socials.
Yeah, those are good all solid picks for that slot. Yeah, yes. Why do you like such bland movies? That's that. I mean, I can't speak for Solo yet, but for Abigail and Kong, I'm like, yeah, they're both just really bland movies.
They're both also very fun. Kong uses a ship's anchor as a weapon. It's great. Just practice for when he got that axe in Kong Godzilla.
When he got his ass beat. Yes, I remember that. That bit was good.
And then Godzilla needed help, and he came back in Godzilla Kong. Okay, they fought the Frost Dragon, together in the Scar King.
Anyway, we can move
I
on.
watched The Northman again this week.
Oh, okay.
Get ready for Eggers. And let me tell you, that is not a movie I should be watching at work on overtime, because after that final battle, I wanted to kick doors in. Like, it's just it's not really a solemn movie, but it's a very, in that way that Eggers makes kind of more quiet, not as bombastic, right? But man, that last fight and the rugby with the stick scene, the sports ball game, whatever that's called, there's there's a sense to him, a force and motion and brutality that he brings to him, and it made me excited for Nosferatu, which I wasn't that excited for. So yeah.
Wait, you weren't that excited for Nosferatu?
No, I don't have a fondness for Nosferatu. Like, I still have yet to see the Werner version.
Yeah, but like, it's Eggers doing a vampire movie. That alone should be enough to. And I'm excited for Nosferatu in spite of how lukewarm I was on The Northman.
Yeah, and so how I feel like you're excited because it's vampires and Eggers. That's how I was. I was like, oh, it's Eggers and Vikings. Let's go. So
I mean, I was excited for The Northman before I watched it. It just wasn't. I mean, it wasn't bad, but it's definitely his weakest movie. Like, I'll say that.
Well, I haven't seen The Lighthouse, so I can't say, but I like it significantly more than the Vivitch.
Oh no, Witch is way better. Oh, that's night and day.
They're both good. I like them both. They're both enjoyable. However, when I left The Northman, again, I wanted to kick down doors and and fight things in my bare hands.
I have forgotten like almost all of that movie. I couldn't tell you what the plot was now. And I saw
Hamlet. You've seen Hamlet, right? You know the story of Hamlet, of Shakespeare?
Well, vaguely. I'm sure I've seen a version of it in school and I was forced to watch it.
Well, you've seen The Northman. Like, it's the original story over which Hamlet was based on. Danish prince comes back, fights his uncle.
Okay. Maybe that's why I found the story so plodding and just kind of generic.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, it's the original Icelandic or Nordic story from which Shakespeare based Hamlet.
Like, it had great visuals, I'll say that, but like I did not get into it. I was not fond of the lobster.
I still need to see The Lighthouse. I'm a little bit afraid though. You and Connor scared me.
Yeah. I mean, The Lighthouse is something you probably should be weirded out more by than some other stuff that you've written off as too art house. Okay.
Oh, it's not too art house. I'm just your guys' reaction to it was like when an older brother shows a younger brother something that is gonna mess them up. I just feel like you guys are waiting for my reaction, So yeah, and just a foe. That man's a maniac, and I love him for it.
Oh yes, he's very good in it. He's very good in it. All right. Well, there's a little bit of news, some actual DC news. Not the comics themselves, admittedly.
Yes.
Solicits, I'm sure, will be coming next week, just in time for a week with 12 or 13 books. So that's lovely. But we did get a random bit of movie news this week, which is that they've not only decided that they're doing this, but they've actually given a release date to a Clayface standalone movie. So that's a weird thing. I do, when they brought this up, I vaguely remembered when they talked about, because Mike Flanagan is writing it, and they mentioned he'd pitched this back in 2023, and when they said that, I went, you know what, I vaguely remember him saying that at some point, that he'd pitched the Clayface movie to Warner Brothers, and then obviously time moved on, everyone just assumed, oh, it's gone, it's not a thing anymore. But no, apparently in 2026 we're getting a Clayface movie. Not directed by Flanagan, just written by Flanagan.
Yeah,
but
he said that he's a big fan of the animated series episodes of Clayface, and he wants to bring that kind of vibe to the big screen of the character. And to that, let's go. Like, I'm here for a Clayface movie.
I mean, I don't know if I'm feeling like a let's go from this. I do think Clayface, out of all the rogues gallery, you could say, hey, let's give them their own movie. I think there's a lot more potential with Clayface, so it could be good. But at the same time, I'm like, I'm not so sure I'm craving a standalone villain movie. This is a little bit Sony for my taste, the Madam Web. Well, not she's a villain, but Madam Web, Craven, Morbius, your Venom, like.
So, do you think this is a reaction to the widespread like how well everybody loved Penguin? Do Do you think they were like, oh, Penguin's getting, received very well. Let's follow through with this Clayface.
Not in pitching, obviously, but in terms of Warner Brothers saying, "Hey, yeah, greenlight it," yeah, maybe the praise for Penguins what put it over that line. That's totally possible. And to be fair, that Penguin show was very good. Like, but it was very good, and it tied into funnily enough, it had some Clayface like symbolism in it. Like, Clayface isn't in the show, but there's a character who shares a name that's with the last name Carlo and does put on disguises, so it felt like they're kind of this is like a realistic homage to the idea of Clayface. And cool. So they've not said yet if this is set in the Matt Reeves Batman universe or if this is going to be in the wider DCU. Given that Clayface as a character is not that grounded, I would assume it's going to be the wider DCU universe. But
seems like it would fit in with that James Gunn kind of style. He's leading with Creature Commandos, so it makes sense. Clayface would fit in to that kind of overall world, larger than life type character, and just even with just hints of Batman, I think it could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, but it sounds like we're going to have this before we get that universe's version of Batman, assuming they're in the same universe, which we don't know for sure at this point. I'm just guessing. Right. So that's a weird choice, but it could be interesting. At the very least, he's a tragic character that could be very compelling, and it'd be cool to see a live action big budget version of Clayface. So I'm not against it completely by any means. So here's another bit of news that was tacked onto this, is that they've also announced a release date for another movie, an animated movie, which presumably will be a theatrical release, because all those direct-to-video animated movies don't get announced this far in advance. And to be honest, the date for this is kind of scaring me, because they've announced a release date of June 30th, 2028 for this animated movie. Okay. Right? Or sorry, actually, the exact phrasing here is a mixed media movie. Whatever that means.
Yeah, what does that mean?
But I was definitely reading animated, because it's Warner Brothers Pictures Animation that's doing it, right? So whatever. Regardless, apparently it's going to tell the origin story of Dick Grayson and Jason Todd as Robins. So I don't know if that means it's like an anthology where it's doing 2 Robin origin stories or what, but it's called Dynamic Duo, and it's coming out in 2028.
What does mix? That's weird. What, like?
Does that mean like Dick Grayson's is going to be live action and Jason Todd's going to be animated, or what? Like, what's going on? Or
vice versa? You know, like you do the more fantastical elements of the circus and with Dick Grayson, and then the grittier.
Oh, okay. Here we go. It's a project from the animation house Swaybox, and it describes here what Swaybox does. It's a new animation house from New Orleans that is using a technology that mixes elements of CGI, stop motion, and live action real time performance.
This still doesn't make sense to me.
This sounds like it might be something kind of new. Like, maybe we can't define this until we see it.
Because when you brought that up at first, I thought, well, this could be like Leica, right? Leica did the stop motion, but it's like it's stop motion advanced because they still use computer elements, right, to animate things. But they still, everything is mainly done in camera still.
It's all motion captured, is what you're saying.
Yeah, kind of. And here but what is live action like? Are we gonna have like realistic backgrounds with kind of stop motion figures, and then it all kind of blended through animation?
Or maybe it'll be live action actors, but the entire world is CG, or stop motion backgrounds. Like maybe this is like their answer to like Across the Spider-Verse. Not that it'll look like that movie, but more like this is going to be like a weird new like style of animation that's different from everything else, and this is maybe what they're going for.
Because the animation style for something like Dick Grayson, I don't know necessarily about Jason Todd, that I could see the Spider-Man kind of stuff working. So yeah, maybe this is pushing that a little bit more forward now, or making it more tactile, unless
Yeah, I'm not saying it's going to be the same style as that. I'm just meaning that it's going to do something unique with animation.
Yeah, right.
That's at least from what they're saying here. That's what makes me think of. So Reeves is producing this, Matt Reeves, that is, but it's not connected to the Batman and the Penguin, which makes sense because it's an animated thing. But okay, it's weird to have announced it so far in advance, but when I think about it though, like Across the Spider-Verse took like 5 years to make after the first one, so if it's that sort of level of animation, maybe that's why. But it is interesting, though, they're saying, hey, we're going to do a big theatrical release animated movie as opposed to all the usual direct-to-video stuff they've been doing for like over a decade at this point.
Yeah, so when you pull up Swaybox on Google, they say that it's also puppetry. So I wonder if that's part of it as well.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean, of course, that they're going to use everything they do in this particular project, so it's tough to say, but I'd definitely be curious to see what a trailer to this looks like when it finally hits in 2027.
Yeah, because looking at their reel that they have when you click onto the website, it does look like CG, but they also look like, oh my god, that's weird. It looks like a CG puppet, right?
Okay.
So like a CG face that you'd see in like a Pixar movie, but it's someone manipulating it through animatronics. So it's almost like Jim Henson meets CG, from what I'm gathering, which for something like Dick Grayson, I think is really cool. Very curious to see. Again, it could end up being a complete catastrophe as well, but at least I'm giving Warner Brothers credit for trying something different.
It sounds interesting, if nothing else, and I'm not sure if it'll be anthology style, or if I wonder if like there'll be flashbacks to their origins, but they're both active. Like, you know, maybe there's like a wraparound where they're both like, you know, Nightwing and Red Robin or something, or Red Hood, I should say. And they're maybe like they think back to their origins, and that's like two big chunks of the movie, and that's why it's got both their origins in it or something. I don't know, but regardless, it sounds interesting at least. I mean, so Dynamic Duo and Clayface were two projects announced officially this week.
Look, as someone who was worried about the amount of Batman that was popping up in the old universe, the fact that they're trying different things here, I really can't complain. You know, because at least they're trying, and they're trying to do something different that isn't what we're used to. So that gets some points, but we'll all see. Yeah. Because like you said, you brought up Craven and Madam Web, and Sony was trying different things, and it has not worked out.
Yeah, but it was like super cynical though. It was like, how can we milk this IP that we own without doing Spider-Man, because that's tied up in the deal with the MCU. Right. So just one little tacked on bit of news here is that we should have a trailer for Superman next week. That was the other thing that was coming out from the news this week.
Very excited for that one.
So we'll see how that looks. Obviously that's out in I think June or July. So
real quick, did you see Madam Web?
I did. We did that on X-Reels. I'll take a moment to pimp the Patreon here, because one of the monthly shows on Patreon that you can access for $5 or more is X-Reels, where me and David, although Tim guested on that episode, we sat and talked about Madame Web for 2.5 hours because it is an absolute train wreck.
Yes, it is.
So yeah, that's a show where we do like just really bad movies, and sometimes they're so bad they're amazing, but sometimes they're just torture. Madame Web was somewhere in the middle of those two categories.
Not interesting enough to be torture, but definitely bad enough to require extra reels. You know, just like, what the hell am I watching? Who thought this was a good idea?
Oh, you said that the wrong way around. Typically, the more interesting it is, the less torture it is, even if it's really bad.
Well, yeah, but you can also be just mediocre and bad, like poorly made. You know what I mean? Like,
well, that's what I'm saying, though. If it's more interesting, then it's not just that. It's like making weird decisions. It's doing stuff that, like, why is all of the villain like clearly dubbed from different dialogue, and his lips don't match his voice at all? You know. Why is Madame Web's main superpower in this movie vehicular manslaughter? It's so many questions to be asked.
That is a great question. And why is the villain's weakness getting hit with cars?
I feel like most people's weakness is getting hit with a car, though, to be fair.
Yeah, but it's like extra. Like, he takes extra damage. God damn, that movie. I look forward to your guys' take on Craven when the time comes, because that's seeming like another...
I mean, I don't know if it's extra reels worthy, although someone did point out it's at like 18% on Rotten Tomatoes, which does kind of put it in the territory if it's got enough bad buzz. But we'll see. We'll see. For Christmas season, we did Hot Frosty.
Yeah, we talked about that last week.
Oh, we did. We mentioned that. That's right.
Well, you talked about you watched it. I don't know if you said you did it for extra reels.
Yeah, that's what it was for. I didn't just decide to watch Hot Frosty. That was actually something that someone picked. Someone won the rights to pick an Extra Reels episode on stream, and they picked Hot Frosty for Christmas. So, yeah, there you go. Did Hot Frosty. We've done all sorts of Drek in recent times. Well, what we've done, we did Cool as Ice, the Vanilla Ice movie. We've done a few Neil Breen movies at this point, who's like an auteur of like shit cinema. We've done Miami Connection, a whole host of the biggies, but also some weird odd finds as well. So yes, that sounds like fun. You can go check that out on Patreon. Dear. And somehow David acts like it's my fault that we're doing that show. Every time he complains to say, "You made me watch this thing." I'm like, yeah.
No, you're choosing to watch.
Yes.
That's how you have to look at it.
I mean, he's not gonna say in it, but still, it's not my fault.
I am a benevolent dictator.
All right. Also, actually, since you brought up the Marvel movies there a little bit before we pivoted to the Superman trailer and extra reels, I just want to say they announced this week that both Chris Evans and Haley Atwell are going to be in the next Avengers movie, and every announcement they're making for that movie is just making me groan and go, this just feels so desperate. Like it just, you're probably going to be successful again, but you're being successful again by going back to everything that was in before that you said was over, that you were done with, and now you. I was
talking to a friend about this because he watched Wolverine and Deadpool, and he had some thoughts. He has kids, so he had to wait till all the kids were away to be able to view through. And we're talking about some of the elements and how, you look back at Marvel and it was kind of planned out, and it felt like story-wise it was all coherent. And looking at a lot of this stuff now, and it just seems they're throwing stuff against the wall, right? Bringing Robert Downey Jr. back as Doom, or bringing him back but as Doom instead of Stark, and bringing Evans back, and now Haley Atwell, who wasn't really gone. They just weren't using Peg, right? Like she showed up in Wanda, what was that? The Doctor Strange movie. She did the voice on What If. Like, so she's kind of been there, but I don't know, man. It's not, I do not get excited. I used to be the voice out of us that was like, oh, it's Marvel, I'll go see it. And now, it's about Harrison Ford being in the next movie, right? I am going to go see it. I'm not that excited though. Like it's not doing much for me. And Chris Evans, I'm sure. Does my wife love Chris Evans? Absolutely. But does it feel storyline? Not even storyline. Does it feel fulfilling to have him come back and play a different version of Captain America? Not really.
Is it even a different version?
Rumors, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but apparently he's playing Nomad, who is the version of Captain America who gave up the eight, where we got U.S. Agent from originally in the comics in the 70s, post-Watergate. And the picture they keep using is this big, audacious cape and cowl. It looks very weird. That's not the suit he's going to be wearing. You don't bring Chris Evans back to have it be silly.
Well, I just read today, apparently Marvel were considering doing a movie with Evans and Atwell, just a standalone movie with them, which I would have assumed would have been like some of their story after he, ended up with her.
Talk about that. I'm excited for that. I was invested in their relationship.
Well, no, because that was an ending. Like that was the happy ending. So doing any more just robs it of that.
It is there, but it also, when you go back and watch Endgame, it opens a lot of questions about Steve and the timeline and this, that, and the other. So if we get a movie about adventures throughout, I don't mind. I mean, yes, they get a happy ending, but, things that they were up to at the time, much more than that, than having them come back to play different versions of those characters, at least to me.
Don't worry. I'm sure. I mean, who else could they bring back to play a slightly different character? I don't know. No one else is. I mean, I guess Scarlett Johansson. They'll have her come back and play some alternate Black Widow.
I mean, is White Widow a character in the MCU at this point?
Yeah, that was the thing they did in that's Florence Pugh.
Okay.
I don't know if they've named her that, but that's technically who she is.
Okay. But yeah, it was just like, that was a big thing in the comics, and that happened like 10, 15 years ago. You had the character of the White Widow coming in. She was just wrecking shop. So, I don't know. It just feels like it's hard to get excited since then, I think. I'm trying to even remember. I think Guardians was the last one I saw. I think so. At this point.
I mean, that was the last one I saw. The last one I saw in the cinema was the last Spider-Man. I have not seen one in theater since then. And
you didn't even go see Guardians, which I thought you were. Wow.
I did make a point of watching it later, but it was the only one at that point I was even interested in even trying to watch, because I was just so like, because I did watch Doctor Strange 2 and Thor 4, and I watched them maybe even in the same day. And I literally watched them as like, oh, they're just on while I'm doing other things, and I still felt like I wasted my time. Like, I still felt just underwhelmed, and like I could have just been doing anything else.
Yeah. So. As I'll just say, as a big fan of that Aaron Thor run, and them getting Bale to play Gore, and to watch him get so misused, it was very upsetting.
Yeah. No, none of the truth. I mean, Harrison Ford get carted out at the Video Game Awards the other night.
I heard he had good things to say about the indie game, which is nice.
I mean, he came out and said one nice thing, I guess. He said, give everyone a round of applause who worked on the game, and that was about it, really. Okay. And he motioned over to the voice actor who was impersonating him for the game and said, hey, he did a great job. But it felt kind of like, just leave him at home. He's walking out there at like 87 or whatever age he is now. He's clearly confused. He doesn't know what a video game is. You know, like because he comes out and he says, "Oh, how about Indiana Jones and the Circle, eh?" And I'm like, "Oh, the title's slightly wrong, but you know, he's trying. He's clearly putting the effort
close. He's close. He's very good on shrinking on that show. So
sure.
Yeah, you know, he's still got it. They said he just does enough to buy an ungodly amount of weed, so then he can crash a plane into a golf course, cycle repeat. You know, so. But yeah, and also the fact that he's looking at other people to replace him as Indiana Jones is very funny, because Indy's very much him, right? Like that character through and through.
Well, it's still his face. That he still used his face in the game.
No, yes, I know, but him going like, "Hey, this guy did a good job," like that kind of vibe.
To be fair, he sounds more like Indy than Harrison Ford does now, right? Because you know he's doing 1980s Indiana Jones as opposed to old man Indiana Jones.
Yes, but yes. If that game wasn't first person, I'd be buying a new system. I'll tell you that much.
Really?
Yeah. I don't do first person games very well. It's hard for me. Ever since, I never got into that type of stuff. I need that third person viewing mode. But yeah, I mean, hearing good things. Heard the game's fantastic. I don't know if you played it yet. But yeah.
No, I've not played it. I'll give it a try at some point, but I'm not in like a super rush to get to it.
Yeah.
But all right, shall we talk about comics then?
Yeah, let's get there. We've vamped enough.
Yes. Action Comics 1079, Mark Waid writing with Michael Shelfer on the art. All right. What was this book?
This is Phantoms Part 10, right? And was it Shelfer the whole time? I guess
that's what Leah Comic Book said. I admittedly remember it being a bit more varied.
Yeah. I just think it's mostly him. There maybe is a couple of
I mean, to be fair, on the front cover, it does just say Shelfer under Waid.
All right. So yeah. So this was the Phantoms Part 10. So at the end of the last issue, Clark had flown into the sun to stop the device from Aether, and the other Kryptonians have been released. And they are now supercharged and wreaking havoc across the globe. We kind of
skip ahead a little bit, and they've already been causing destruction all over the planet, and we see all the carnage in their wake, and a bunch of superheroes are trying to fight them, but not doing particularly well. Yeah. And Superman wakes up in a secret location. So it's like a lead mine, because that's the other Kryptonians wouldn't be able to see him in there, and he's got the old regen suit on. And then Mon-El is there. He's the one who saves Superman after he gets his shit kicked out of him by all the Kryptonians in the sun.
Yeah, it was an old-fashioned take him out to the woodhouse beating.
Yeah, it turns out that Mon-El's using Aether's technology to kind of make him kind of like a phantom, like a phase. He's like phasing in and out. So they don't know how long the tech will last though, because it's battery powered. So there's a good chance that at the end of this story, Mon-El's going to disappear into thin air.
Or if Mark Waid is having a dark feeling, he just has him, appear back on Earth and die of lead poisoning very horrifically.
Oh, sure. No, I was thinking, I mean, we're talking about the Marvel movies here. I was thinking of I Don't Feel So Good, Mr. Stark. I was kind of imagining that.
Yeah. Well, and definitely throughout this, because Clark is constantly driving home that Mon-El's his brother. you know. And there's a lot of that camaraderie and brother, and it feels very much like, oh, this is my last day before retirement, type vibes. At least that's what I was picking up on. But
he's definitely playing the card now that's making us think about how this story's going to end, and it's really going to be one of two things. Either he's going to have the sad, tragic ending where he gets out a hero, or they're going to somehow think of a way to save him and keep him around. Yeah. It's one of the other.
Mean, I definitely think if we're heading towards a more ethical kind of Phantom Zone, because they've shown now that the people of Kandor were kind of correct, that these villains are terrible. That's why they got locked away in the Phantom Zone to begin with. But I like having a more ethical prison, making Mon-El kind of the warden of the Phantom Zone. I think that's something that, might work.
I can see them going down that route, yeah. Yeah, to be fair, no one I think ever argued with the Kandorians that the people in there were bad. It was just more that even as bad as they are, they don't necessarily deserve the hellscape that the Phantom Zone was.
Right.
So, so basically Superman and Mon-El, along with the other supers, go around and take out and like capture a bunch of the Kryptonians. Not all of them. They get a lot of them, but not quite all. As they point out by the end, eventually they get to Kara and they get to some others. Batman's on comms, kind of like keeping people sort of in the right place and all that. I will say, I'm very up and down on the art in this issue, because I think there's like panels that look really good, and then there's other panels where someone's face just looks really wrong, like.
Or the dimensions on them are kind of off.
Yeah, there's ones where the cartoony style works really well, and I think it looks good for a lot of panels. But then there'll be like one panel of Batman's face where it just looks really undefined and detailed, and it looks too like cartoony and childish.
Yeah, so like if you look on the page where they're explaining to Clark in the cave, on the top of the page, he's in the black suit still, and Jimmy's there with Mon-El. And we get to see all the other stuff that's going on. Then you turn the page and Jimmy, Clark, and Mon-El are all standing there.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it's the same artist. Like it looks, the second page looks way more cartoony, almost like caricatures of these characters. And I don't know if it's a posing issue. I don't know if it's the breakdowns or what. But yeah, it seems like when the art is in smaller panels or there's some form of motion, Sulphur's art looks a lot better. And then there's another page with Kara where she just, I had this second glance who this was. Like I knew this was Supergirl based off of the costume and the hair, but this is not like any version of Supergirl I've ever seen.
Yeah, also, he really thought, Supergirl needs the big mum hips in this panel for some reason.
She's Pixar presents Kara.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's Miss Incredible. Yeah, it's it's the Pixar hips. But then again, the close-ups on the next page I think look fine. It's still cartoony, but they're cartoony in a really nice way that looks good.
Right, and they seem like there's some action in there, like there's some motion.
Yeah. That said, though, there's a full-page spread later on where Superman like punches a Kryptonian, where he says enough. And I do think that looks a bit weird, that page. So it's very backwards and forwards. I like it.
He almost looks like when from Super Sons, when John and Damian were running around as kids. It almost has the same type of proportions.
Oh, sure, yeah, I can see that.
But yeah.
So yeah, very very hit and miss in that sense. But yeah, there's some fun stuff in here. Dr. Light using making the red UV light to depower some Kryptonians.
And in the beginning, them talking to Firestorm about why don't you just make synthetic kryptonite, and Firestorm's like, kryptonite's not on the periodic table, you guys got to give me a minute. So the payoff at the end where Firestorm's made some like kryptonite gauntlets for them to fight back the Kryptonians.
I like the idea of that. I do think the way he just shows up and says, hey guys, I figured it out, and then there's a couple of panels of people punching Kryptonians with kryptonite gloves. I do find it a little bit too easy and anticlimactic.
Yeah, well, there's that, and also I feel like Shazam, who's powered by gods, right, and magic, doesn't really need the kryptonite. I feel like Shazam should be able to hold his own.
Yeah, but my main problem, though, is it's just too quick. It's like you set up this problem where a character has to solve something, and then the next time we see him, he's just solved it. So it just feels too easy. There's no... there's that, and I just feel like there's other heroes that that could have gotten a showcase than Shazam going cool, right? Like, in that moment. Yeah. It's just not the point I was trying to make, though. It's more a writing problem with how they present the problem and how they deal with it. But, the panel that I really didn't like of Batman is when he's top of a page where he's saying Supercorp is suddenly getting emergency alerts. It's the panel that starts with him saying that. In fact, it's the last page of the main story. Now I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
Batman's face in that panel looks like he's on like a Saturday morning cartoon, but not Batman the animated series. He looks like he's on
Teen Titans Go.
Yeah, a Nickelodeon show or something. It just doesn't quite work. But basically, the cliffhanger at the end is they've realized that the Kryptonians they haven't found, the Zoners, I think is they refer to them as, they've basically left Earth and they're off causing chaos on other planets. New Thanagar, Ran, Tamaran, all that stuff. So yeah, I think it's a fun issue. I think it does treat like a big deal that these Phantom Zone prisoners are now just running rampant. But I do also think that them taking out all the ones that are on Earth by the end of one issue does feel a little bit easy and quick. So I don't know.
We definitely have 2 issues left, so they have to do some heavy work because we're gonna need the ending to feel fitting, right? Yeah. So we have 1 issue to get there.
Knowing that we have 12 issues and that we're rushing this here, as it feels rushed to me, I would have preferred the prisoners getting out of the Phantom Zone to be a couple issues earlier, so we could really show how difficult it is, like dealing with a bunch of Superman level power beings.
Of rogue Kryptonians running around, multiple. Because we saw what happened when the ones that were merged, in the first issue. The Aether had formed together when they escaped and whatnot. That's the other thing too that we missed was the gold kryptonite's missing, because that's what Clark was going to go get. He's going to get that gold kryptonite like he used on the merged ones, and it's not to be found. So that's another thing that needs to be resolved.
Yeah, so that's somewhere, and they assume that a Zoner's got it some place, but we don't actually know that for sure. That's their assumption. It's a fair assumption, but it could be something else. Found it? Yeah, it could be someone else that has it. I'm not sure about that.
I also wonder, would the gold kryptonite work on Mon-El, right? Because Daxam is right, or would that? Are you thinking the lead poisoning?
Are you thinking it would take away his powers but save him because now he's no longer, now he's just human, right? Effectively.
I'm wondering.
Okay.
But yeah, so I don't know where that plot's going. However, the ones out in space, we keep seeing Connor wearing that commander's cape, right?
Oh, do you think that's going to be relevant? That subplot's going to actually matter now in the back couple issues?
I do think that he's going to call them in to help, bring in the rogue Kryptonians across the galaxy.
Yeah, that'll be weird because, like, on the one hand, okay, you were setting something up for later, which is good, but it didn't make it feel any less like an important part of the story in the first place. Like I still had to read through it to begin with, and it didn't feel that important at the time. So.
Well, the only reason I kept thinking that is because he's wearing the cape in every piece of art we see him in still.
Sure. I mean, that could just be he got that, so we're going to keep him in it for the rest of the story. Yeah. But I mean, I don't know.
I mean, if they add that, if that's his new jacket instead of the leather jacket, I could go for it.
Maybe they'll swap Connor's life for Mon-El's. I could live with that.
That's mean.
Not that I really care about Mon-El that much, to be honest.
No. You're talking about Connor Kent, not Connor co-host, right?
Connor Kent, yes.
Yes, okay.
I mean, I'll trade Connor co-host as well.
Okay, you can only say one, Connor Kent or Connor co-host. Both of them are going to hurt me. So, you have to keep that in mind.
I mean, I guess reluctantly, real Connor has more utility than Connor Kent does.
Gotcha. That's mean still.
To which one?
I don't know. Pick, I guess. You banish both of them to the Phantom Zone, I guess, right? For Connor knows what he did. Crimes of being a ginger.
Yeah. So yeah, a little bit lukewarm on this issue. I think it's fine, and there's some nice moments and pages. But I definitely have some little critiques on the art, and definitely some critiques on how easy it feels like they deal with all the Kryptonians. I suppose on the one hand you say, well, they've got access to red UV light but I guess the other problem is they make it sound like early on, everyone's struggling, even though Supergirl and the rest of the super family are involved in this, so we need Superman back for it, which is like, okay, fine, if you're telling me that they need Superman to like lead the charge, But then it feels like they win by having kryptonite from Firestorm and red UV light from Dr. Light, and I'm like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like Superman was as integral to
instrumental.
Yeah, if anything, it'd have been more interesting if they had to deal with it without him, because it would have felt like, oh shit, we don't even have Superman, so everyone's going to have to really, put their thinking caps on and be strategic about this.
Yeah. But even then, they're fully powered Kryptonians, right? Then it's just raw power, because Waid goes out of the way to say, like, yeah, they charged up real quick, but they don't really have Clark's finesse of using these powers on top of it too. So it does seem like even without Superman, it would have been a challenge, or even with Superman, it would have been a challenge for all of them to rein him. So you're right, it is a little bit easy.
It's a bit easy, and it feels like Superman himself, while he's treated like he's important to like taking them down, it ends up not being that important. It ends up he's just another one that's there, basically. So it is what it is. But hey. The backup, though, continues to be very good. In fact, I think it's really popping now that we're at the point where everything's kind of starting to pay off, because the brother, who kind of appeared, or it was kind of hard to interpret last issue, but this issue makes it clear he's arrived.
He's there.
Yes, the brother, the Destructor, is there. And he's there to take his sister back, and Kara tries to stand in his way. And he basically just pushes her aside and acts like he's a god and says, oh, like, like, I didn't ask for your name, stupid little Earth girl, or whatever he calls her.
He calls her an errand girl, which is
errand girl. Yeah,
like, you're here to do my bidding, get out of my way. And you're just like, oh, this guy.
Yeah. So it becomes this thing where Kara's like trying to fight him. It's not going super well, but she's basically pleading with the sister, with the prisoner, hey, you don't have to make this choice. You don't have to be his other half. You can make your own choices. And, she's like, he keeps saying like, oh, you are the other part of me, I am the Punisher, you are the Fear. And one of the best pages of the whole issue is this page where he puts his head against her forehead, and their masks kind of like spark together, and there's kind of like this interpretation of like their bond, and it basically looks like this, it looks like space, the stars, and it's like they're represented by two skeletons with a big sword going through both of them, like they're bound by like blood and death, or whatever you want to call that. So it's a really cool page. It really
they're bound through violence, right? It looks like they're run through with the sword.
Yeah, and he says, I am the only voice, and that's when Kara jumps in and says, no, you're not the only voice. You can have your own voice. You don't have to be alone. And like she says, oh, I will try to resist him. I will try to hold away from him. And it actually pushes him away. And he's like kind of obviously frustrated. The fight kind of breaks out again. And he's like, oh, I'm going to kill you, blah, 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 blah. I'm the Destroyer. You would stick up for her. You protect her. Says, you're alone. It's impossible for you to beat me. And the final page is Kara saying, like, I am not alone. And you see that psychically the prisoner's with her, but so is Power Girl, who they established last part was also kind of telekinetically, or telepathically, I should say, linking up to her. So she's got like the power of these two other characters sort of in her to help her with this fight. So yeah,
and I like
really
that
good
too, because of the duality again of Kara and Power Girl, right? Of that. So, the whole we are one voice, but it's like, well, no, you're your own voice, just like Kara's her own voice, Power Girl's her own, even though, they're still both versions of Supergirl. So the fact that tied back around, I thought, again, Tamaki really, really doing some fun stuff with the characters.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me was in this issue is how imposing this villain was. Like, because of the way they've been building up to him as this almost like larger than life threat, him just being there and walking towards them felt super intimidating. Like, like he feels like a bigger threat and more established and has more aura around him than a lot of villains feel like they have in their first stories, or even in after several stories. Like, I feel like this was a masterclass because of the mystique around what the origin story of the prisoner was, and then finding out this, like, oh, she's got a brother, and like they've been destroying worlds together and all this. He feels so imposing when he comes in. It feels like a big deal. It feels like a big moment, and I think that's super impressive. And it's something that comic books like throw so many villains at us. They have so many big pages of villains showing up, And for the most part, you just kind of shrug and go, it's another one of those moments. But this actually had achieved some aura to him before he appeared.
Yeah, it really is a masterclass in pacing, right? And all the small, quiet moments that led to her telling the origin and how she's the destroyer of worlds, and all that kind of stuff. And then we see kind of his presence throughout her life to when he finally does. It's like it finally matches that larger than life presence.
And I think the thing that makes it feel so strong isn't even the fact that he's destroying worlds, because lots of comic book villains are destroying worlds. It's how personal it is to the prisoner, because it's like the prisoners ran away from like an abusive husband kind of story, right? Where it's not so much that this guy is dangerous to a big mass of people, but it's the idea if he's ever alone with her again, he that is terrifying to think what he might do. Right, that's the example I'm using, is the idea of an abusive husband who tracks down his wife and like drags her back into his life. This is not quite that, but it reminds me of it in the personal level, where it's like she's tried to run away from this. She even wants to die because of what this brother has made her do, because of what she's been a part of as a result of him. So when he shows up again, it feels like it's having a big impact because of how much it's like going to set her back, like her psychology and her decision making and getting away from this is all going to be reset if Supergirl can't help her. And in some level, I think you at least get how screwed up she is from all these experiences through these past few parts of the story. That, yeah, there's like the danger here isn't so much that they'll be back together and destroying worlds again. It's that Supergirl has to protect her from this abusive brother who's come back for her, and that feeling is what makes it feel super big. So, really smart in the writing with that, I think. So yeah, I've been really enjoying this backup.
Yeah, and then that page where her and Kara, the prisoner and Kara, touch hands, right? And it's just like you can just feel that the space between them, right? It's closing, and I just the way that the art makes that work. Yeah, when they finally do touch hands. That's
when the there's like an energy blast that throws the brother back. It's almost like the power of this friendship is repelling him in a way.
It's just a real good stuff.
Yeah, it's really good. So yeah, like a lot. All right, what are you giving Action Comics?
I'm gonna give this a straight 7.
I almost want to go above that because of the backup, because the backup is really clicking now. That it's like set all of its pieces in motion and we're getting the big payoffs to what's going on. But yeah, the main story is just okay. It does kind of squander a little bit of the potential that it has. So I think I will say the backup gets up to the 7. If I was just doing the main story, it probably would be like more like a 6 or a 6.5. But the backup is very, very good. So yeah, so cool. All right, Batman and Robin, issue 16, legacy number 82. This is Philip Kennedy Johnson writing with Carmine D. Giandomenico and Miguel Mendonca on the art. Although the cover just says Mendonca, so League of Comic Geeks might be incorrectly telling me things.
No, Giandomenico had two pages.
Did he? Okay. So I'm not imagining.
So I think it said pages 6 and 7.
Okay. So yeah, I think this is getting better as it goes. I think I'm digging it a bit more as it builds up this mystique of the killer. And kind of, as much as it's inserting stuff into Bruce's past, it's not like that wild. It's like, it's this other woman who became a cop who was also studying under the same detective when he was in the UK kind of thing.
Yeah, I do like, because it fits with the theme of Memento Mori, right? The reminder that everyone will die. And it's this constant reminder that Bruce's life has been surrounded by death. Right, like even before he was Batman, he was in this class and they were going over, these victims of this thing and of whatever Memento Mori is, and yeah, just that idea and how it's constantly tying back that death is kind of this not just a motivator for Bruce, but like it's always surrounding him, and it's ever present, and yeah, God, Philip Kennedy Johnson's good.
Yeah, the book opens with a bunch of true crime addicts who are at the Arkham Asylum, because obviously Arkham Tower is now the actual hospital and prison now. So it's just this derelict building, and they're basically here talking about Memento Mori, the killer and all that. And they're geeking out about it. But then it seems like spirits come to life in Arkham Asylum and kill them all. Also, the guy leading this tour looks like Walter White, just going to mention that.
100% he does. They look like Heisenberg without the hat.
Yep, that's all I could think when I looked at him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like they all die, and then it's a spooky couple of pages, but it's very different to everything else we've seen in the story so far. And then you'll cut to Batman and Robin at the crime scene with the police and looking into everything. And the big thing here is we see that Damien is still kind of being haunted with the memories of the girl who got hurt under his watch back last issue. So really digging them continuing this. But it distracts him for a little bit, and Batman notices he's distracted. But once again, though, we get to like, okay, more of this backstory and like what this set of murders that Batman was. I mean, I shouldn't even say Batman because he wasn't Batman yet, but the Bruce Wayne was present for when he was training under this detective, and we get a different crime scene in London from years ago as they're discussing what. And even then, this was meant to be a copycat killer of some old murders because it was like set up just like this old murders from like back in like the end of the 1800s or whatever. So yeah, this stuff's super interesting, especially then when it turns out that this cop from France who was there in these flashbacks is showing up, this Lieutenant Lautrec. Is that how you say that?
I think so. French is not a thing, but yeah, close enough.
Yeah. So she's here, and Batman immediately is like, "Wait, why does a French like policewoman need what was your interest in this copycat killer?" And she's like, "I don't think it's a copycat. It's like the details of this are identical." And Batman's like, "It's it's not it's a copycat because the killer's been dead for a long time. It's impossible." Although, of course, the end of this issue is Batman finally saying, "Oh no, I heard his voice. It's definitely him." Okay, I was somehow wrong. It's just him. Okay.
Here's my issue with some of these Batman stories where he's constantly saying, like, there's no way this could be something mystical or like that.
It feels weird because he's not in his own little universe. He's tied with all these superheroes and stuff.
He dated Zatanna and he knows Constantine. Like, can he open up his mind a little bit and go, you know what? Maybe this is some kind of demonic entity that's coming back to haunt me.
I think,
but he's like, no, it's a copycat.
I think you could maybe read it as like he doesn't want to believe it's him because that's so traumatic to think that it's this killer who's back. So he's basically forcing himself into this lie of ignorance. Because it makes him feel better.
No, then that works. I mean, it's one of those things that anytime there's this type of story, he also fights a mudman that can transform in basically a werebat. So like, there's just also Poison Ivy talks to plants. There's some weird things out there that sometimes when Bruce has this closer, but it does make sense. By the end of the issue, it definitely feels it's more about trauma, because when you look at the true crime people, and this is where I feel that Philip Kennedy Johnson's making headway into the story, that it seems to be more about trauma and like the way that true crime people kind of cast all that away because it's all about the story and the fandom and like being really into this grotesque stuff.
Yeah, it's all about the mystique of the killer and all that rather than anything else.
And you tend to forget about the victims and that these are real people, and it's all about what the next piece of content is. So I definitely feel like that's kind of where it's going, that this is whoever Memento is, whatever it is, it kind of thrives on that trauma. And there's no more traumatized hero out there than Batman, right?
Yeah.
Than Bruce Wayne. So it makes sense. It's almost like a feedback loop kind of deal.
Yes, the podcasts wanted to look the eyes of Memento in the eye, and Memento came in, took his sunglasses off, and gave them a good look as they were dying.
What's that?
Have you not seen Terrifier 3 yet?
No, I have. But, you're talking about that guy. Okay. The girl.
The girl, yes.
Yes. I was looking more mystical, less Art the Clown murdering people with a chainsaw.
No, it was just more the podcast, like the true crime podcaster angle. It's just funny to me now that we're at a point where this is becoming a recurring type of character that's in fiction, is the podcaster of some kind. It's just kind of funny to me.
Well, it's just because it's like, right, like, at the end of the day, we're just two guys that like comics that are talking about comics, right? And at the end of the day, that doesn't matter that other comic readers are going to seek us out. It's when people are trying to use these platforms to talk about dead people and, go off of that. I do think that if you're a creative person, there is kind of a a way to attack that idea. And I think people like, Damien Leone from Terrifier and Philip Kennedy Johnson, they have a viewpoint towards that, and you can play with it. It's different than when the character named Podcast shows up in Ghostbusters, because that just feels like you're trying to gain, not even nostalgia points. That's not the word I'm looking for. And don't relevancy.
Don't even forget Halloween 2018. There was podcasters in that movie, professional podcasters even.
Right, but I feel like that's another one where David Gordon Green uses them as to drive the lesson home, of kind of what's going on here and in Terrifier 3. It felt
like a cheap plot crutch to me in that movie, but
it felt like David Gordon Green didn't have it thought out as much as this here, right? Like, but anyways, it is a little crazy that that's where we are. But as someone who's my significant other loves all that true crime stuff, there is a whole lot of it out there, and you can look at it as, let's look at the Giandomenico one that just came out on Netflix. If you've been around the true crimes, around that element, there's a rush quality to some of these now, and people are just eating them up, that they're not taking time to actually not investigate. They're not taking the time to actually get into why these cases, why people are drawn to them. They're just pumping them out. And here, these people that are on this tour of Arkham, right? It gets to the point where they're just here to see something grotesque. They don't even seem to care about the idea of Memento. But yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to make any serious point about the comic or even true crime podcasters. I was just commenting on the idea of how many podcast characters are popping up in fiction now. So you went off on a tangent. I wasn't getting to any of that.
I enjoy that though, because it's creatives engaging with this idea that maybe we've gone too far. So anytime something like this can reflect actual society, I think it's a win.
Yeah, it's just like a weird thing, because it's like you have to accept that there's enough. It's enough of a thing now that sometimes a character is going to be a podcaster in a movie, and that's kind of weird to me. Just because it feels like such a new thing. It feels.
I mean, what would have that been 20 years ago? What do we think? Is that someone with a blog now? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, someone on a message board, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
But what's that 20 years before that though? If you're going back to the 80s, like, what's that?
I don't know.
Someone who's in a fan club? like
fan club, or something along those lines. Yeah, I don't know.
It's it's strange. It's just, I don't know, it's just a weird moment of reflection that I can't quite parse. Anyway, Batman and Robin are training, and Robin, his head's not in it. He wants to talk to Batman about what's going on, and Batman gets kind of frustrated and says, fine, you clearly don't want to train, let's talk about what's going on. And he finds out that that Robin, has been skipping school, and he wants to sort of not patrol tonight, or not, because Batman wants to go to Arkham and interrogate someone. Turns out to be Scarecrow later, but we don't know that yet. And Robin says, "Hey, can I ditch that since you're going with that lieutenant lady anyway, and I can go to something else?" And it turns out that Damien has recently been volunteering at the hospital, based on stuff that he's read in his, in Jonathan Wayne's, what?
Thomas Wayne, sorry.
It's because I just mentioned Scarecrow. I got Jonathan.
I know what you meant, but Jonathan Kent, Martha Kent, Wayne, Thomas. Yeah.
Wires are getting crossed. But yeah, because he's been reading Thomas Wayne's journal about what he used to do and stuff, and because he's been feeling guilty about the girl, and when he was there visiting her, someone said, "Hey, would you like to volunteer?" And he sort of signed up for it. I actually really like this as an interesting development for Damien, and kind of battling back against Batman, especially when Batman tries to kind of say, hey, you have a father to talk to. I didn't, so you don't have to go and find yourself and who you're going to be like I did. And Damien hits back with, you had Pennyworth, and I'm not going to have anyone dying based on my mistakes like he did for yours. And Batman's left standing there, and I'm like, holy shit, Damien just hit him with it. The only thing I don't like about this scene is there's a bit just before this where Damien's saying that he's been when he signed up to be a volunteer, he forged Bruce's signature on the consent form, and Batman gets mad and yells, "Excuse me." And for some reason that felt really weird to me. I almost imagine Batman being like, "Yeah, that's my boy," to that, rather than. I just wasn't expecting to get.
Oh, go ahead.
This is just such a normal like parent being mad at their kid for something moment that I feel like Batman and Robin as a father and son duo would be beyond like I feel like Damien's probably forged his signature on a bunch of school slips already. Yep. Not because he was trying to get away with that, and just because Batman doesn't want to stop and take time for that. Like he's too busy being Batman.
I was gonna say, this is a man that puts on a fake mustache and pretends to be somebody else. I don't think he'd be that upset with his son forging his signature.
Yeah. But the art and the line, excuse me, just felt like such a non like Batman line.
But it does feel like again normal kind of parenting kind of vibes too, which is a nice it's a nice tether to remind you that this is still kind of a father-son relationship book. So I don't mind it as much, but yeah, it feels weird, especially when you followed up with the Alfred died because you made mistakes. It's just like, no, Alfred died because you went into Gotham. You weren't supposed to.
I mean, that's true. I don't know if it's trying to comment on the actual events of the book, though.
I don't think it is either, but I'm like, that's not what happened. It wasn't because of Bruce's mistake.
Yeah, but Damien's not like, but the mistake's not like anything that happened at the moment in that story. The mistake is because you became Batman, Alfred died. Like like that's the point he's making. He's not saying it's because of anything he did during that story. That stuff's irrelevant.
Yeah, no, but if that's the case though, then that's just Damien just being a little a-hole at that point, Well,
I'm not necessarily arguing that. I'm just saying that's not the point of what you said. Yeah. So it's not like you can be pedantic and say, well, no, technically it's your fault, Damien, but that's not really what he's getting at. So yeah, the next scene is at Arkham Tower. Batman meets up with the lieutenant, and she's like really annoyed that she has to go through the metal detectors when Batman just gets to swoop in anywhere he wants.
She's not wrong though. Like, if you look at her as like this outsider to Gotham, being like, so y'all just make extra rules for him, or he doesn't have to play by any rules. Cool, got it.
Yeah, she's definitely not on team let Batman do his job, but. It turns out they're there to see Scarecrow, they're there to see Jonathan Crane, and basically because this drug that all the victims had in their system is this thing that's supposed to be extinct, the one person Batman thinks would be able to recreate it might be Jonathan Crane. After all, his specialty is fear toxins and whatnot.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals that make you fear things.
Yeah, so it turns out the lieutenant's very well read and kind of takes over the interrogation and says, hey, you made some of this stuff when you were in college, and some people ended up in the hospital with the exact symptoms of this drug. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that you did recreate this, and this isn't just chasing a dragon. And so Batman even has a little smirk in the art, which is nice, because the art is very good. As much as I complained about his reaction shot, and it wasn't because the art was bad, it was just because I didn't feel like the reaction was correct. Yeah.
Right.
The art is generally very good in this issue, actually. Very moody. All the stuff with them walking into the Arkham Tower was really good stuff. But Batman basically goes into Batman mode when Scarecrow won't talk and demands to know who came and got you to make this, who recreated this drug, who paid you for this or whatever, and gets angry, starts slamming on the desk, and the lieutenant's kind of like freaking out a little bit, especially when Batman like flips the table up, and she's clearly like, this is not police procedure, you don't like get scary and interrogate the prisoner like this. And Batman's yelling, who is Memento, tell me, and is really going off. But then all of a sudden, right, and you can there's a little bit of build up to it, but Batman all of a sudden in the next page has turned around and has kicked the guard in the face. And you're like, what the hell's going on? And then he immediately says and explains it. You weren't pointing that gun at me. You were pointing at Crane, almost like you were going to kill him before he could tell me what he knows. So then he'd demand to know something. But then the guy that he's holding presses a button that causes an explosion elsewhere in the building. And so, the alarms start going off and like chaos starts to ensue. And it does sound like Scarecrow at one point as well. Was about to say something, like he's like, he says he's the devil and he crossed an ocean to punish you, but yeah, that was pretty much it. He just wanted the poppy and that was it, but he was starting to talk.
So yeah, the thing they're looking for is called Gravedigger's Poppy, right? Which I think that's a pretty bad name for something like that is going to cause these hallucinations, right? Because that's what we see. What happens when Memento shows up, and also, did you bring up that 3 people that Memento spared 3 people, and the guard is one of them?
No, I didn't mention that. You're right.
Yeah.
So yeah, because when we were looking at the Arkham Asylum stuff earlier, there was footprints of like 3 people who weren't there amongst the bodies, and this seems to be one of the survivors that were spared.
And then we started seeing those wispy, undead things start to come down the hall with this, really, really scary version of Memento behind them. So it's really, really, really spooky stuff.
Yeah, that final page is very, very good. It's very atmospheric. It's like sort of the walls have turned red, but there's this sort of white mist coming down the hall. And I actually don't know which one of those are meant to be like his spirits and which ones are just Arkham prisoners running for their lives. Because the guy at the front looks like he's running from the rest of them, but maybe that's just my misinterpretation of it.
So are we thinking the Memento is because when you introduce this Gravedigger's Poppy it's an hallucinogen, right? It's not. So are we thinking this is almost like a culty kind of thing, and that people are hearing the same voice because of the drug? Right? And does that mean that Bruce was exposed to this way back in the day?
It's interesting you say this because, I mean, I don't know about being exposed back in the day. I don't know about that. But when the fire starts and this smoke starts coming in through the vents, which is not necessarily smoke from the fire, it may just be the chemical being pumped in to the room. Batman's only got one gas mask, so he gives it to the lieutenant and says, "Wear this." He just tanks it, right? So this idea that it's after that moment where he decides to do that, and then the Memento starts speaking over the comms. That's when Batman says, "Oh, then I heard it. I know his voice." So there is some credence there to what you just said, that maybe because he's breathed this stuff in and then he hears the voice, it maybe does lend some ideas to, oh, this character isn't really there potentially, but it's something that he's seeing because he's breathed this stuff in. I'd have to go back and look at the end of issue 1 though, when we get a glimpse of him, because I can't remember how it presented him then. But there is definitely some interesting wiggle room here to say, oh, maybe he's just hearing this because he's been haunted from the memories, and it's almost like his brain's filling in what the voice sounds like, as opposed to it actually being him now. But I will say this mystery has gotten more interesting with each issue and how they've built it up, the whole cult aspect to it. And
the reason he only has one mask too is because that Robin always carries the spare.
Yes.
Right. So, and Robin not being there, Batman didn't really plan to, have more than one mask here. So that was a nice little twist.
Yeah, I'm going back to the opening scene. Yeah, okay, I just wanted to confirm it. You do see some mist come into that scene before all the characters see the quote-unquote spirits. So it may just be a case of there's no spirits, it's just people, it's just a cult that are coming to kill them, but they look like spirits because they're all been drugged with this stuff.
Yes.
Or maybe there isn't any real people. Maybe they just think they're being attacked by something.
And they kill each other, right?
Yeah, they kill each other. Yeah, because they say that at one point, right? That their nails have got blood under them. No, well, that wasn't in the present day. That was in the flashback. The case from London. But yeah, that's what they said. That they may have killed each other. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of fun stuff, man. Like, again, the whole aspect of trauma to Batman and kind of what this Memento represents.
Yeah, do you think that means then that next issue potentially Batman is going to be like dangerous because he's breathed this stuff in, and maybe Robin's going to have to come in and fight him?
Maybe, but also knowing what we know about Batman and his resistance to these kind of toxins, maybe it won't get him fully, right? Because if this is something that Jonathan Crane has synthesized before, you would think that Batman's been inoculated a little bit, right? So, but yeah, maybe along the line that he's going to fight his way out, and he's thinking that he's fighting Memento, but it's people in Arkham.
To be fair, there's no reason to suspect that Jonathan Crane's ever used this in any of his stuff. Like they don't make it sound like it's something he's been using. It's something he experimented with once, but it doesn't sound like it's part of his usual fear toxin. I think the real question is that Scarecrow does say, someone wants revenge and they've traveled across the ocean to get to you. Someone is behind this. If it's not actually Memento, there is someone who's putting this into motion and releasing the gas, even if Memento himself isn't it. I guess the obvious answer is either the cop that was training him in London, or possibly even the lieutenant, if they want to go that route. Now, both of those are not exciting prospects, but they both would have traveled across the ocean, which is why they're kind of obvious candidates at the moment. Plus, they're kind of like easy twists to call, just because it's typical. It would be boring writing for it to be either of them, if I'm honest. But so I hope it's not. I hope it's not. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I hope it's not too. I don't know. It doesn't make sense if it's the lieutenant, just because like she was there, unless we're doing some kind of culty aspect of things, right? Where you have to keep the Legend of Memento going forward or whatever. But why exactly? It also feels like, unless it's just the hallucination, it feels like it's someone who knows that Bruce is Batman, right? So that would make it seem like it's larger than life than just, this police detective from back in the day or the lieutenant too. Give it a more mystical kind of aspect as well. Because I always kind of like that in a story. It's kind of Temple of Doom where Indy is like, well, no, it's always this. There's always an explanation behind things. But then there's the one piece of the story that is mystical, that does have these, magical elements to it that is beyond explanation. So maybe it's a little of A, a little of B, and, we'll see.
I mean, maybe somehow it is Memento still, but he's using everything. But if we're going with the idea that they're just like, he's just heard it because of the drug, then maybe, I don't know. I don't know who the compelling answer would be to who it is.
That's true.
But I'm curious. They've got me interested. Like, I'm definitely intrigued by the mystery, and it's led to a lot of cool horror movie style visuals in this issue, which is nice. Yeah,
for sure. It was definitely one of those books I was like, I gotta read Batman and Robin, and then I finished it. I was like, okay, Philip Kennedy Johnson's working again. We're cooking here.
Yeah. It wasn't like an instant hit after the first issue, but it's definitely felt like it's coming together over the next couple. So. Very pleased. Art's very strong as well. Arguably the most coherent art. I mean, it's only the second book, so I just mean versus action, but
and Giandomenico did the flashback pages too.
Yeah, that makes sense, because those are the ones that stick out as being different.
So yeah.
No, it's very good. What are you giving Batman and Robin, Matt?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I will just go with the straight 8 for now, but I am digging it, and it's getting better, so cool to see. Alright, Green Lantern, issue 18, legacy number 554, Jeremy Adams writing with Xermánico on the art. So, lots going on here, paying off a lot of things that have just been happening. Now, I think this one flowed a little bit better than the last issue, which was nice. Although I will say there was one moment of confusion where it switched between Varan and Tharos, and I genuinely didn't notice it switched.
I will never forgive whoever named those characters that. I will never. You could have given them separate across, and it would have been easier, right? But we had Theron. See, I just did it. Theros and Varan, and they're both attacking, and we're dealing with both of them at the same time.
Yeah, they're in different locations, but because I really wish there was a little thing sort of just saying, hey, remember that Varan is inside the source energy. Because I didn't realize we switched to him. I thought it was still Tharos, and I thought, Kyle's attacking Tharos, cool. And then the next chunk of the issue, it's like Hal and all the other Green Lanterns going up to attack Tharos, and I thought, where's Kyle? Why are they not running into Kyle? Kyle's up here.
And are you saying that all Durlans look the same?
No, I'm not saying that. I can't even see their faces. Admittedly, once they're both on the same page, you can see that one's like covered in white and the other one's covered in whatever orange or whatever it is. But that was a little confusing at one point.
I will never forgive them for that one. Whoever it was, I don't know if that was Philip Kennedy Johnson. I don't know if that was Jeremy Adams. But God, man, editor, step in, separate their names a bit.
Yeah, Yeah, and the art is good though. And Xermánico, knows what he's doing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, no, this is space opera-y type stuff again that I've been missing in Green Lantern a little bit, and I feel like despite all the moving parts, it really comes together.
Yeah, big moment early on is Kilowog's got Jessica all wrapped up in yellow snakes because he's a Yellow Lantern right now, and Jessica is able to basically just willpower him to remember who he is and that he's being controlled.
Because she understands fear in a way that other Lanterns don't. right? So she's able to appeal to that fear that's operating him right now.
Yeah, and it turns out that he ended up in the Yellow Lantern Battery. So yeah, and it led to Tharos sort of like making a soldier and whatnot.
Yeah, and just the idea too that Kilowog does have the ability to, being that he was the drill instructor kind of the Green Lantern Corps, that he has the ability to instill fear in others. So, he was able to kind of absorb all that fear energy as well. I thought that was a fun little spin.
Yeah. There's a little bit of Carol with the Avatar. The
Predator.
Yes, the Predator. Don't really have much to say about that yet. Obviously, it comes back a little bit at the end, but it just says that he loves her and it's trying to sort of woo her into letting him in so that like she's possessed by it again.
This is a very niche wrestling reference, but when he kept saying "I love you," I just kept hearing "Brother Love," which made it even creepier.
I mean, I guess he's the same color as Brother Love's face was, so
right?
That's something, I guess.
I get Jeremy Adams. Good on you for making it creepier, even if that wasn't your intent.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot of action this issue. It's a lot of coming up and trying to get to Tharos. There's a whole big boom at one point. From the source light, it leaves a big crater. That's kind of your big money moment pages. And that's when Varen comes up carrying Kyle, although he drops him away on the way up. And I will say it's a little bit convenient from a writing point of view that Theron and Varys are like Tharos and Varen, to say it the right way around.
You did it too, yeah.
Right? They basically like, hey, I don't want you to have all this power, and I don't want you to have all this power. We hate each other now. Okay, that's great. However, how about we team up first to take out the lanterns? And I thought that was just a little bit convenient that they just sort of decide that in one panel. That, let's just be united to take on these Green Lanterns.
I'll defeat you, Uncle. No, you won't, nephew. Well, you know what? Let's team up on these guys first, and then we'll fight. Yeah, it's like, okay.
It felt a little bit convenient just to have it. Obviously, Kilowog gets his big comeback moment to surprise everyone that he's fine again.
Calls them all poozers, which I got a fist bump from me.
Yeah, and the big thing is that there's a portal that is opened to have the what you call it, the oh god, what's the
old god,
the Dark Star thing.
Yes.
Olgrin. That's the word I was looking for.
The will of Olgrin. Yeah. And they're letting these, Lovecraftian creatures through.
Yes.
So they gotta get that closed.
But the Green Lanterns punch Tharos into the portal, so he's stranded in there, and they close it up. So he's there. So we get like a little moment where he like looks over his shoulder and he's like, "Wait, what's there? What's this?" And it's like a super intimidating bit. Plus, we get a little catch up as well with Kelly, who's like in her head talking to John's sister, and she's like, "Hey, this is all over now. You'll be able to wake up soon." So it kind of ends in this just kind of like, "Hey, we won the fight" kind of moment, and Hal's like, "Oh, Carol, I hope you're okay." And we see that she is okay, that she kind of shoos away the Predator and says, "No, I'm on my own now. I don't need you. Like, hey, I'm not giving in to you," and that's it. So all that stuff wraps up, and the little epilogue, which kind of sets up the next bit of the story here, is that the Grey Lantern, Entropy, or whatever we're calling him.
He's Sorrow.
Or Sorrow, sorry.
Yep.
Entropy, Sorrow. That's it. Anyway, so he goes to see a character, and I was like, who the hell is this? And I looked him up. So he was introduced in 2014, so he's a relatively new creation. So
give me his name.
I can't remember it. I looked it up earlier and I forgot.
Because I kind of remember him too, because he is a Dark Star.
Something like that?
Yeah, Darkheart.
Is that?
I think so. Hold on.
That was a stab. I don't know if I'm right. I read it like once earlier today. Starbreaker. That's what it was. Yes. I
kind of remember him.
Yeah, so that was during the New 52 era. That would have been Green Lantern Corps, because I didn't go to 52 issues, so it must have been near the end of that run.
Yeah.
So
I'm pulling that one up because I kind of remember him. He was kind of familiar, and they were trying to relaunch the Dark Stars, and he was kind of like this vampire that fed on energy. And I can kind of see why Sorrow teaming up with something that feeds on energy makes or feeds on emotional spectrum energy makes some sense. So
Yeah, that's kind of the tease at the end here. I guess the other thing they mention is that there's these fractal lanterns that Kyle mentions to everyone else that they're like they can just tap into any of the spectrum at any time.
Yeah, so this is what I like too, that they're the idea that we're getting away from the avatars, right? Is that, you know, Carol deals with the Predator, doesn't need it because that's not what the power of love's all about, right? It's Jeremy Adams taking those concepts that John's introduced and was like, yeah, but what if we turn it back into an actual emotional type tie? And that because of Kelly's experimentations with being Teen Lantern, right, you can kind of have these lanterns like Kyle, these fractal lanterns that can experience multiple kind of shift in between them. Because that's kind of, you know, Hal was always able to do that too, right? Like he had the yellow energy, you know, because he was parallax and whatnot. So it's taking it and retying it to the idea of the source being ever flowing.
Yeah, but he could never shift between them at will, though.
No. But he was able to feel both, you know, he was able to feel both fear and will. Right?
Oh, well, I mean, yeah, but true. I mean, we also have Red Lantern Sinestro right now, and that's his third color out of the bunch.
Right. And then you have these guys that they can do, you know, they can shift between both. So it's tying into this concept of the source being this ever-flowing energy that, you know, not that it can be manipulated, but it's not just, you know, because of these space aliens, you know, that are in these lanterns.
Oh yeah,
on these source worlds,
the Guardians
right?
are back. Now that you mentioned the aliens,
and they've been transformed. They look more like elves than they ever have. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, I don't know where they're going with that. We'll see how it plays out. I suspect that the Green Lanterns, though, will largely just be Green Lanterns because they're using a new power battery that's on Earth. But, I mean, yeah, we'll see. I don't know where this is going. Sometimes they get a little bit too up their own...
Tuckus.
Yeah, like sometimes when they go really deep into kind of redefining how like the power spectrums all work and how the rings work, sometimes I zone out a little bit because it starts to just be a lot of fluff because like, okay, you're doing a bunch of stuff and I'm not really going to understand it completely, and then it won't matter in a couple of years because you'll change it all again anyway back to what everyone recognizes from before. So I hope it's compelling when they get into it a bit deeper here, because here obviously it's just a quick explanation at the end. There's not much to it yet. So I'm hoping that they flesh it out and it feels a little bit more thought out, a little bit more solidified, and more like I can actually get to grasp of what the new rules are for all this stuff. But I did appreciate, though, as much as it made it for a little bit more jumpy around in terms of like tone, I did appreciate that we actually jumped from different narration in this, because, you know, typically it's mostly been Hal narrating Green Lantern, this book, but in this issue, it actually, like, early on, we have like a page that's narrated by Kyle when he's off to do what he's doing. Then the page with Jessica and Kilowog, it's Jessica's narration, and then Kilowog's narration comes in when he's remembering what happened to him. So, and then Carol gets narration when she's doing her thing for like a page or two. So it does feel like it was bouncing around everyone, and it's saying it's more of an ensemble book now, at least for this issue. I don't know if that's going to stick, but I'd be curious to see if maybe we can jump to a different Lantern for an issue, maybe going forward. I don't know if we will, but curious to see them playing with that at least a little bit.
Kind of like the mission statement from Adams was, "We are all Green Lantern," you know?
Yeah. Other than that, though, it's mostly an action issue. It's mostly a pretty good action issue, but it is that. That is absolutely what it is. So... it wasn't a bad read, though, by any means. Other than
I appreciate how fast it did move, though. Right, like it was action sequence, but it was balanced all pretty well. But it wasn't, you know, after you read so many books, and you know, I left this one kind of towards last. You know, it was nice to be able to kind of whip through one. I
will say, though, it did feel a little bit rushed. Like maybe for whatever reason, this next arc has to start, you know, soon. This Fracture Spectrum arc. And it was like, oh, we have to get through this quickly. I do think that maybe an extra issue for this arc would have helped them breathe a little bit with these last two issues that felt like they were moving super quick.
It would be nice if they didn't have to keep tying Green Lantern into other events, right? Just let Adams tell the story.
I mean, that's true, yeah. There was two issues that tied into the event. Maybe if they didn't have to do that, it would have been a much smoother... because maybe he planned all this out and it was like, okay, we're going to start this event by this date because we're going to have our own tie-ins to that, and then DC said, oh hey, two of your issues before then have to tie into Absolute Power. So, do that. And he's like, shit, I still have to finish this arc by this issue, though. So maybe that's why some of these issues have felt a little bit like haphazard and rushed, because he's flying through so much that I do think... Because I think what I liked about the first couple arcs of this book is that it felt like it was taking its time, really letting the characters breathe, and how it's divulging the information, and it hit some really high highs right before we get into this arc. And I've enjoyed this arc, but it's definitely felt a bit messier, so I'm hoping that we can refocus a little bit after this one and feel like we're slowing down a touch. So like we said, we have that Green Lantern Green Arrow special by Jeremy Adams coming up in the next couple of weeks, so we'll see what that does. But
for sure.
All right, what are you rating Green Lantern?
I'm gonna give this a straight 8.
I'm gonna go 7. I think it's a little bit rushed, a little bit hectic. Not quite as hectic as last issue, but I still think it was maybe a bit of a problem, and I would have liked it to be a bit more spread out, I think, just so it could breathe. But 7 out of 10 for me. All right, Superwoman Special Issue 1. Joshua Williamson writing with Laura Braga, Nikola Čižmešija, and Edwin Galmon on the art. So yeah, lots of artists on this. It is oversized, to be fair. So yeah, this is basically, to a point anyway. Well, actually, no, by the end we kind of just know outright what it is. But like it's like, okay, how did Lois get powers? It's not actually set in the past for the most part. It's kind of like a present day little story where Lois tells the story to the other characters. So we have both Supergirl and other Superwoman, or Superwoman Red, as Lana calls herself in this issue, just for easy naming. So Lois has got writer's block. She's struggling. They show up in civvies and say, hey, let's go get dinner or something. And she's like, I can't. I get too much work. And then they say, how about crime fighting? And she's like, yeah, I'm game for that. So we get some pages of them out being a trio of super ladies, which is kind of cool. And they're hanging out in the Eiffel Tower. And she's basically saying she's having a hard time getting into this new role of writing while she's also being the editor, because she'd always bounce ideas off of Perry, and Perry would like help her shape what the good ideas were, and now she doesn't have that. So they're like, hey, why don't you bounce ideas off of us? And it ends up turning into, when did this become a problem? And it's like, oh, it's since she had powers. So we actually get the story, and it all ties back into her having that super armor that she got from Supercorp back in Absolute Power. And it does seem to be when all the powers, I say all, when some powers went to the wrong people or whatever at the end of that event, that's what's caused this. And it spends a lot of this issue basically just showing her discover the powers. There's a bit of a mystery as to like when she got them, because she passed out and woke up like back at the Daily Planet like nothing had happened, and no one knows how that happened. So that's something still to be answered.
Yeah, because she wakes up, right? The last thing she remembers is going down into the ocean after, the Justice League destroys the Amazo bots, right?
Yeah.
And because of the armor was kind of tied into that technology, she goes down over the ocean, but she wakes up in her reporter clothes, well, in her editor clothes, on the Daily Planet building. And she's found by Jimmy in Silver Banshee, who's going up, to Jimmy's clearly not working, right? And is startled that she's up there. So
he's hoping to get lucky with the Irish.
Yes, there you go. And yeah, so I thought that was pretty funny. Like that's how she is kind of found, and it adds one of those kind of, it's a very Clark Kent moment, right? Where it's like, oh, Clark, what are you doing up here? Oh, just getting a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
Well, what's funny though is that she doesn't actually know why she's up here in this case, because she doesn't remember why she got there. But and then this, the three super ladies are doing stuff again, and she's still telling the story, and she's talking about all this. And basically, we see the first moment where she picked up a couch by accident, and she's like, "Oh shit, I've got super strength." And then she went to Mercy at Supercorp, because this is all set during when Clark was in the Phantom Zone in action, which is a nice bit of editorial just to kind of line all this stuff up. And she's like, oh shit, how did that happen? And they actually tell her not to use her powers because they don't actually know, one, what the extent of them are yet, and also like this could be like a battery where you deplete and then once they're gone, so you probably shouldn't just like wade into situations. But of course, Lois on their way home from Supercorp hears some police sirens and says, screw it, I'm going to go help. And that's actually how she finds out she's bulletproof, because she gets hit and is okay. But
Yeah.
I love that when she does this though, like Lana and Kara are immediately like, "Hey Lois, that was a dumb move. Like, what if you weren't bulletproof? Like, you would have just got yourself killed for seeming no reason." And they show the moment where she tells Clark that she's got powers when he gets back, and she even wears his glasses for, as she puts it, dramatic effect, which was a cute touch. So she could rip off the shirt and reveal the Superman. And it's just a t-shirt she's wearing. She's not wearing a full outfit yet.
No.
And they fly together. It's all romantic and all that. And at this point, I was thinking, because when they talk to Mr. Terrific and they talk about her training and Clark's like training her how to use all the various powers, it turns out, oh, she does have all of the Superman powers. She has all of them.
Yep.
They kind of talk about it like, okay, we don't really know exactly what's happened here, but it is possible that whatever's happened to make you absorb the solar energy might not be permanent. It could be that it still runs out. And I was thinking, okay, that's their interesting little way of writing this, where she's not going to be superpowered forever. It'll maybe go in a dramatic moment when she's saving someone later, but we can have it for a bit and then it'll just go away. However, by the end of the issue, they don't make it permanent per se, because I think it'll end, but they reveal that it's not just something that's going to run out. The big question that comes up at the end is someone points out, hey, Superwoman like has all these powers, and when all the powers got mixed up at the end of Absolute Power, and again, I'll criticize it a little bit as a whole, that it seems like a very limited amount of powers got affected. Like, it's fire and ice and like one or two other people, and that's it. Yeah. It's not a lot of people that have been affected by this.
Well, we gotta see. We haven't seen as much yet, but the whole idea of the Atom Project, right, is they're trying to solve all these.
Yeah, but it's not affected any of the other characters that are in any books. So like, it feels meaningless, right? Other than this Superwoman thing, it feels meaningless.
Yes, but there is that Atom book that's coming out as well, right? We're still just a little bit behind.
Yes, and we'll see what other D-listers have had their powers messed up. Yeah, exciting. I'll just say
it's not... call Fire and Ice D-listers.
They're D-listers, come on.
They had a book once. I didn't finish it, but it was there.
Having a miniseries does not mean you're not a D-list, okay?
I mean, okay.
Not necessarily. If it's a really great book that's got critical acclaim, that's a bit different. But anyway, so the point I get to is the question comes up, but we don't know, like, Superman still get his powers, Supergirl still get her powers. Where did these powers come from? And in the final page, you just see Zod looking pissed, and you're like, oh, she's got Zod's powers. Zod's going to be grouchy about this.
So they find out that suit that Lois borrowed was one of Luthor's that was meant for deep space, right?
Yeah, although they don't explain exactly what it's for, though, because Mercy even has like a line where she says they can never find out why Lex built that suit. So that's still a mystery to be answered as well.
And that... So I don't know if that's why Zod's power, but also, how did Zod get his power taken if he had nothing to do with the absolute power stuff?
That's something that I'm sure will come up, but they say that it was connected to the Amazo like grid or something, whatever you want to call it, right? It was connected to them, and it was designed for deep space. I mean, maybe this is a suit Lex used to go visit Zod at some point, so maybe it was like tied to Zod somehow that way.
Yeah,
is all I can think. Maybe Lex was going to make a deal with them when he was still evil. Because
I love the reveal of that, because you're like, oh, that's why. So, because I'm doing all the accounting here and be like, all of the the Kryptonian based characters still all have their powers. So whose is this? I didn't even factor in Zod. So I thought that was a fun little reveal.
It was a genuinely good reveal that was like a nice surprise that I didn't see coming, and it's actually kind of fun, the idea that he's just human right now and is going to probably do whatever he can to get his powers back, because I don't imagine he's very happy about it. So
no, and with that tease that we got in Superman with Doomsday talking about, oh, Zod's still, you're not wearing the eye patch yet, so you must not have run into Zod, right? And having that tease in that last issue of Superman as well, the breadcrumbs were there, right? So, but yeah, that reveal was a lot of fun. I just trying to figure out all the little moving pieces that make it work is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm curious to see.
Or maddening, because it is Williamson. So it could be very upsetting as well.
I'm curious to see where it goes. I will say the art change for the back third of the book was very noticeable. right? Basically, when it gets to her training with Clark, that's when the art changes drastically to a very more cartoony anime style.
That's the Čižmešija stuff.
And it's not, I don't think it's particularly bad or anything, but it's very, very different to the rest of the book, so it really stuck out, that change.
Yeah, it doesn't match the other two, the Laura Braga and who's the other artist, the Galmon stuff.
Yeah, I think Braga's the one I probably liked the most.
Yeah.
If I'm thinking
I think Braga's the main, when we see her going around with the super women, I think that's all Braga, so.
And even maybe even the flashback at that first part of the issue as well might be Braga.
Yeah.
It looks similar. Yeah. No, I mean, this was pretty solid. Obviously, it had a purpose. It's kind of like sometimes like a special or a one shot can just be fluff that you don't need to read. This does actually feel like it's very important to the ongoing Superman story because it's going to lead up to whatever is going to happen with Zod and Lois, and it explains where Lois got her powers from. So it is notable though that Lois doesn't know where her powers came from right now. We do as the audience, but it's heavily implied at least. Because to be fair, it's not like Zod says he doesn't have his powers. It's just a panel of Zod, and the narration makes you think, oh, it's probably him. But there's room for them to like what if it's Ursula? What if Zod's pissed because his wife's powers are gone? Then he's like, oh,
right.
Yeah, I don't know.
And his kid's still kicking around somewhere with Sinestro's kid, but we don't care. So, there's almost an argument would be the one that makes sense.
Yeah, there's almost an argument to be said that if they find out that it's Zod's powers that are gone, it's like, well, he's kind of evil. Maybe it's a good thing that he doesn't have superhuman powers anymore.
Right, but then you get around to like whose decision was that? Right? Is that Waller? Is that how's that factor in? Because that gets into the whole point of absolute power, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's bad if it's the heroes getting their powers taken, but what about the villains? Is it still good? Is it bad? Like, what is it? So there's a lot of potential there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I think it's important though that no one made the choice to give them to Lois. It was just kind of fate, effectively, that led it to be her, because she was in that suit at the time of the Amazel destruction. So, honestly, this was pretty enjoyable. It had a good reveal at the end. Some of the moments of her saying, I could maybe argue if I was going to nitpick that her deciding to ignore the advice not to use the powers the second she gets out of that conversation is a bit quick for my liking. I would have liked her to be struggling with that for a day or two, over a little montage or something.
Well, that and the accidentally finding out she's bulletproof too. That goes a little bit hand in hand with that. It makes her a fun reveal, but still, it felt like the drama really wasn't there. That could have been, like you're saying, her making that rush decision to use her powers before she knows, what they're capable of. I don't know. Yeah, could have been handled more.
Yeah, so there's definitely some little quirks in the writing, but I mean, I shouldn't be surprised at that with Williamson at this point.
True.
But overall, though, pretty good. And I'm definitely not mad at the potential setup of a powerless Zod being pissed and coming to get his powers back. Is kind of interesting, so.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, what were you giving the Superwoman special?
I'm going to give this an 8.5. I liked it way more than I thought.
I'll give it an 8. I liked it. I'm not going to go super high, but yeah, good. All right, Batman Dark Patterns, issue 1, Dan Waters writing with Hayden Sherman on the art. So yeah, we get Detective-y Batman here, which is cool.
Also feels like a little bit early Batman too.
Well, I think he specifically says he's been Batman for 3 years, so it's
okay.
It's Batman year 3 if you want to call it that.
Okay.
But yeah, so it starts off with him just describing some of the awful things that have happened in Gotham recently. Like kids play this game in the subway tracks that's led to various kids being killed over the years.
They're literally playing chicken with a train.
Talks about these dogs that are supposed to be illegal because they're too vicious, but they're still there in the bad parts of Gotham, and they've been terrorizing pensioners and killing cats. And then there's a fire. It's an abandoned building, luckily, but there's a fire's broke out, and Batman doesn't know, is this kids messing around? Is this arson? But it's basically this dour intro where he's like, look, I can't save the people of Gotham from themselves if they're going to mess up and do these bad things. I can't do anything about that, but I can target the big things. I can target the murderers. I can target this stuff. And this is a murder story. He goes to a crime scene where the victim is basically being stabbed by a bunch of little needles.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'd call it that.
Connor would hate this book.
But the more notable thing here, other than the victim of the very elaborate killing, and this seems to be the third of the murders that's happened, which now Batman takes it very seriously because it's a serial killer as opposed to just a one-time thing, is that there's this like guy from the forensics there, like the new like head of that for the police.
Yeah.
That is really enthusiastic and is impressed with like the surgical precision of the killer, and he seems really into it. And Batman immediately is like, Gordon, can we speak outside alone? Yeah, I don't like him. He's way into this. Yeah, can we not use this guy? And Gordon's like, you're lucky we got a new coroner after the last one. But I actually loved this. This was a great line.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yeah. The last coroner ran away from the city when the Joker sent him like a Christmas card saying, to my favorite collaborator. That is such a funny line.
I want to see what Dan Watters can do elsewhere. His take on Gotham is darkly funny at times. So more of that. Also, this guy that they find, he has all the needles and stuff shoved into him. There's no blood, right? And so I understand why this coroner's looking at it as like, oh wow, but the way that Bruce points out, like, he also has symptoms of huffing formaldehyde. So, Jim, you might want to take a look at this guy. I thought that was also darkly funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got like a tone that it strikes up immediately. And obviously Batman tells us about the previous two victims, and that the first one was a lawyer who did a lot of shady cases, or well, not shady, but he represented
a pro bono, but not for the side that you would think.
No. Before that, he did cases for the evil companies. He did cases for the Iceberg Lounge, for LexCorp, like basically the DC version of all the ugly corporations. However, recently he started doing pro bono cases for good causes. Batman speculates that it's maybe because his conscience caught up to him, or maybe Gordon's the one that says that, but it's this idea that he kind of switched to doing good, like, because Batman mentions he's been doing pro bono cases recently, and Gordon's like, oh, he's an altruistic lawyer, and he's like, yeah, not until recently, because he was actually a scumbag for a long time.
Yeah.
So he was the first kill, and Batman breaks into like the law office to like look at his records. And finds a surprising amount of resistance when there's like an army of security guards that come to like fight him. And one of my favorite panels of the book actually is a panel of like 5 different like guns all pointing at Batman. It's like a really cool shot of like them all like in a line.
And yeah, it's Hayden Sherman, who's we've been enjoying his work on Wonder Woman, or the Absolute Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Right. Same kind of breakdowns that we're getting to. A lot of fun with the shapes. Right, for the pages and whatnot. So yeah,
and Batman jumps out the window, but he does get hit, so he's actually patching himself up afterwards, and he's like, it hurts less if I do it myself, Alfred, because Alfred wants to do it. And then Alfred points out that he's stitching up a wound that still got a bullet in it, and he's like, all right, fine, if you must, Alfred. But basically he looks into these files and finds out that the second two victims were both people that the lawyer had represented, or the lawyer had represented the opposition in their cases. Like, one was suing the city because the bridge collapsed with his wife and daughter on it. The other person had also lost family members, and they were suing whoever was responsible. And the lawyer was on the opposite side. Even though, like, because at one point Alfred says, "Oh, is there a revenge thing here?" Because was it the man who died like at the start of the issue, the one they found, the victim. He was prosecuted years ago for the potential deaths of his elderly parents. And when Alfred says, "Oh, was it a revenge thing?" Then he's like, "No, because he didn't do it. It turned out it was like a leak of some kind in the house." So it
was faulty wiring on the detector.
Yeah,
that killed them, right? So, but because he had the most to gain from it, it was looked at that it was him. So it seems it's also a bit of corruption at play.
Yeah,
as well, right? So again, Gotham being the city that it is, the suspects it's uncountable the amount of people it could be.
Yeah, so we don't know who it is, but we do know they're working down this list from his clients alphabetically. So Batman basically is like, this is who's next. Like, we know who's coming, who's next. There's no like weird pattern to it. It's just quite simple. So Batman goes out and stakes out this next target's house, his apartment, and when he hears the guy scream and say, "Oh my God, what are you?" Batman actually kind of holds back for a bit and says, he's going to speak so freely right now because he thinks he's in the clear, that no one's going to hear this. So I'm going to listen to him talk for as long as possible until I have to intervene. So he does. Like, he hears him say a bunch of things. And yeah, the villain, whoever it is, says, "I can give you what I could never have, what they took away from me. They took it away from me, but you can have so very much of it." So very ominous, very creepy, hard to get a gauge on what he's actually saying here. But when Batman jumps into the apartment, the villain looks a lot like the first victim, actually. It's like a very mutilated man with lots of like blades and twigs like sticking out of him. It's very, it's kind of like a grunge version of Pinhead or something like that.
Yes. It's do-it-yourself piercing, and this guy's going all the way through. It's not just ears and eyebrows. Oh my God! Dan Waters has a take for these creepy characters, right? Because I was like, what if this is the 10-eyed man, right? And we're going through it. This is worse than the 10-eyed man.
He's got little push pins like all over his head as well, actually.
Yes, and so when Batman goes to fight him, right, he notices like there's nails in his throat, so he can't kick there. I just had a cookie delivery. Yeah, he can't kick there or punch there. So it's almost like Batman has to fight to keep this man alive.
Yeah, to make clear what you're saying there is basically this guy is effectively booby trapped all the places where he could be killed, or all the places that he could be hit. So if Batman punches him anywhere where the organs are, he's got blades that will like stab him there. So if Batman punches him in the heart, the blade that's there is going to kill him. Same with his throat. Like basically his entire body, like he can't hit this guy without killing him. So Batman has to like try and think of a way around that, and
he can't even hit him with a train dart because it's just gonna make him more powerful.
So yeah, he struggles greatly here, and it actually ends up being the victim because like there's a little bit of backstory with the victim that Batman explained before, which is he'd like double crossed or he'd pissed off the Falcone family, and the Falcone family had killed his wife, so he's been like living scared ever since then and tried to make good, but he's got a gun in the apartment because he was worried that they'd come back for him. So he actually shoots the gun, like a shotgun, at the villain. The villain runs away, but Batman, because he's so disorientated from the shotgun blast, like in the close range of the apartment, he can't get up in time to chase after him. So he's pretty pissed. In fact, he yells "you idiot" at the guy. So
to be fair, there's a man with 1 million piercings beating the piss out of Batman. He did think he was helping.
To be fair, as far as justifiable shootings go, this one's high on the list. To be honest.
So just imagine that guy coming in and be like, "I can give you what you want. I can make you like me," and you're just like, "Oh no, get the hell away!" Like, it's very creepy. I love Dan Waters for this.
Yeah, so then the last page, because we're right at the end of the issue here, is just Batman, Bruce Wayne's looking through like some old books, and it's basically just like he's like, I kind of recognize what this thing is to some extent, and it's basically like medieval folklore of this thing called the Wound Man, and there's like a drawing in the book that he's looking at, or an illustration of this guy who's like symbolically like basically just used swords and different things to stab himself all over. So it doesn't look quite like the thing we just saw, but you can see how spiritually it's the same idea.
Close enough.
Yeah.
Close enough in real life. But yeah, and this is an illustration of all the places someone could like, it was for like medieval doctors to know where they could make cuts and whatnot, and the person still be okay. So it's meant to be non-fatal, except that this, whoever this pierced man, this wound man is, right, is following through. But yeah.
So the idea is that he, like, this wound man thinks he's healing people in some way, and it seems like whoever this killer is based himself off this. But, I mean, even this illustration is a hell of a visual. For
For sure.
Like I could, because there's so many books coming out soon, like any reason to not like add this to the read pile would have been so easy, but it's just so goddamn good that of course
it has so much going for it. Like again, it's got Dan Waters, Hayden Sherman, and now you introduce this villain, which is like, okay, we're doing like a mystery angle, kind of, you know, like you said, Detective Batman, and then it becomes like 7 with Batman, and yeah. So let's go. This is one definitely not dropping.
Yeah, which is something Detective and Batman, the books tend to not get into as much as this just raw like thriller detective Batman. So it's actually got a place, you know, it's got a slot that it's filling into.
And from, you know, we read that Gotham, the Arkham book that Dan Waters did, too, that had kind of a detective element with the Arkham psychiatrist going around with the 10-eyed man, and what's his name? He took over Batman for Azrael. There we go.
That's what you. Yes, I wasn't sure you were trying to say, so I couldn't help you.
I went to say Jean Paul, but then just the image of the bat suit that he wore came into my head. So we know that he's got a flair for these type of detective stories. So I was already sold, and then you're gonna have, like you said, gutter punk Pinhead in on this, and so much enjoyment.
One of the more memorable visuals I saw this week in a comic book. It was exciting to see where it could go from here. So, no, very, very good. And what are you giving Batman Dark Patterns issue 1?
I'm going to give this a 9.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yep, 9 out of 10. All right. Batman Santa Claus Silent Night Returns issue 3. Jeff Parker writing with Lukas, Ketner, and Michele Bandini on the art. So yeah, like I said earlier, I know I'm not going to have time to read this the next 2 weeks, so I didn't bother reading it this week either. So, but Matt did read it still, so you can chime in.
I'm a mark for Santa and Santa lore. So here we go. This picks up where we left off at with the Hollow Man, the Hollow Knight, the Silent Knight, attacking Santa. He had just taken Jason Blood, and Flash runs in, and he's like, oh, I can handle this guy because I've been phasing and teleporting since I was a kid. And as he's trying to run circles around the Silent Knight, Flash gets drained. He gets the mark put on him, but the Knight draws all of his energy. And now instead of just being a hollow shell of a suit of armor, it's now has a skeleton, right? And so everyone starts freaking out because now Flash is in that kind of mummy mode that we've seen. So Zatanna puts like this amber casing around him, and Felix Faust is like, oh wow, are you making a paperweight or a present, right? And so they end up banning Faust now for this. You know, kind of his lack of respect for what looks like the death of the Flash. They banned him from this manor for 10 years. And Robin tries to question some of these, you know, zombies, and Gentleman Ghost steps in and is like, hey, it doesn't work like that. You're not dealing with a ghost, you're dealing with the undead. I know they seem the same, but they're very different. You have to look at this how a ghost would see it, not a zombie. And Zatanna starts wondering why Gentleman Ghost would volunteer to help. And he's like, look, you know, we all know that Hawkman's my longtime enemy. This is a version of him. And with how Hawkman's spirit works being reincarnated, it's almost as if this thing is lacking a soul. And if that's the case, there's going to be a way to go about it. I know a thing or two about that, being a ghost. But also I get to take out a piece of Hawkman while I'm at it. It's just a benefit. So Zatanna, knowing this now that, you know, they're going to need people that the Knight can't really affect, sends out these spells that she's been working on, and she sells it to Damian like, these have taken a while. This is kind of our last hurrah. And she unleashes them from her hat, and they take the form of these doves. While the doves go off to find the heroes, that we're gonna need. We go back into the Hollow Kingdom, and our Justice League that's in there has been fighting the undead armies, and Bruce has to keep telling Superman to stop, because the more power he expends, the more power the Knight's going to take from him, right? And they don't know yet that he's been made a skeleton, right? Like, he's gaining more and more power. John Stewart's, he depletes his energy. It's been 24 hours. So the protective dome he has over them collapses. Nubia helps out Thunderheart and basically shows, like, if they fight using, like, their weapons and not their raw power, then they won't be drained. So her being able to fire these arrows at these trolls and whatnot, she says this is a skill, not a power. And then Mara, who hasn't been marked, is able to manipulate the water vapor to blind and kind of disguise their exit from the trolls and the other elements. And then that's when the Knight shows back up. And as the Knight is showing up, Santa has followed him through when he disappeared. When he was fighting Zatanna and them, he's followed him through to this realm, and before he can mark Batman, Santa takes him to the ground. Before he had jumped into the portal, Santa had said, "Find Eula, that'll be the help." So as Zatanna and Damian and all the other magicians are waiting for Zatanna's spells to come back, Damian goes to talk to the tree, because that's how Santa's told him how to get into contact. So he runs over there and is like, Santa said, Eula, he needs your help. They're like, this kid's talking to a tree. Like, we do magic, but even this is a bit too far. And despite all of that, the doves come back, and the three heroes that it brings that, can't be touched by the Silent Knight is Robot Man from the Doom Patrol, Metamorpho, and Mary Marvel. And, each of them have their own reasons, I'm sure, that we'll get to why they can't be affected. But, like, Metamorpho is like, hey, I've been, kicking ancient, monsters forever. Robot Man is like, well, we've been chasing this case all week as the Doom Patrol. And Mary's like, well, I had to dump out on a date, but if you need my help, I'm here. They bring out Jason Blood in that protective amber that they put, Flash in as well. And the two is, I think, Dr. Mist and the other Baron. So essentially not Doctor Strange. They're like, we can feel the spell coming through Jason Blood. We need to get him out. And despite being in this form, Jason Blood is still able to get his changing words out. And so he starts, gone the form of man, rise the demon, and Etrigan busts out of the amber. And essentially he's here now to help, because no one messes with Jason Blood but Etrigan. And if this thing is, whatever the Silent Knight is, it didn't get, Etrigan's permission to do all this stuff. As they're rounding up all of these undead zombies that are still attacking the manor, this portal opens, and they worry it could be the Knight. So Etrigan gets ready to fight, but Damian stops him and is like, no, this is how Santa travels. And out through the portal steps Mrs. Claus, who turns out to be Eula, who is she's called Eula of the Holder Folk. And she asks where her husband is. And it's not Mrs. Claus as we know her. She is a light elf from Asgardian mythology. And she's got a spear. She stabs through the zombie. And I did a bit of searching because I've never heard of the Holder Folk. Come to find out, the Holder Folk are the wild spirits of the Norse, right? So these are kind of the forest spirits that lived amongst Midgard. So while she looks like an elf, she's almost like, you've heard of like the dyads and the naiads of Greek mythology, the kind of the nature spirits that are responsible for the rain and the storms and this, that, and the other. This is the Norse version of that. So Santa bagged himself this nature spirit, and she's come out to help, which was a really, really fun turn in this story. We're getting the full group of the Santa characters. So yeah, a lot of fun. On a busier week, I'm still excited to see where this is going, because again, I love the Santa lore, and the fact that Jeff Parker's mixing in the kind of the northern legends into this, again, just like he did with the Krampus, we're playing with Christmas mythos and bringing it into superheroes. This is always something I'm really a fan of, and then introducing Etrigan into this, and we're almost forming almost like a shadow pact here of these characters. You have Gentleman Ghost, Damien, Zatanna. Now you have Ula, right? In order to save our other heroes who Santa's with now. Also, when Santa shows up, I forgot until just now, Clark gets very excited that it's Santa. So again, keeping that from the first series, that Clark is really into Santa Claus. The art here is by Lukas Ketner and Michele Bandini. It's balanced really well. You can't really tell where, one artist is to the other. But the art's kind of just that DC house style, as we've seen. So, points away for that. But yeah, a whole lot of fun. This issue is specifically called We Three Kings, based off of the Christmas song. But yeah, I'll give this a 7.5.
Okay. Patreon time now, because every month on Patreon you can make me read a book at one of the higher tiers. I'm going to do 2 this week because the rest of the month's so busy, as previously mentioned. So first up is American Vampire 1976 issue 3, which last issue ended with the realization, at least from Travis and Poole's part of the story, that they think Dracula's back and is in New York City. While Skinner, Pearl, and Book were doing the train heist, but it turned out to be a trap, and there's vampires there. This book actually starts with like a little glimpse of how Gus was kidnapped, the kid, and it's actually Felicia having a nightmare of it happening, and it's the mummy character that shows up at our place to give her this like fancy mythological mask she was looking for. It's like material from like a changeling that can, like, so she's preparing a disguise of some kind for something. But yeah, so this was a character who, if I remember correctly, was in the last story with the team they put together to try and save the day. But that's like the opening scene, and it's kind of on its own. We go back to the folks on the train, and Book and Pearl rush the vampires thinking they're the ones that have to take this fight. But then they get shot and realize, oh no, they've got gold bullets. Like, they've came prepared for American vampires. And they actually push, like, Skinner aside to say, no, Skinner, we're the vampires here. You, let us protect you. And then they get shot and go down. And immediately, Skinner, like, ends up shooting the vampires because his bullets have got their weakness in it. Whatever it was, I can't remember. Saline. Concentrate saline. That was it. So it's like, hey, Skinner did this. And there's a really funny bit here, actually, where Skinner hears like a voice from outside saying, hey, there's more of us out here. There's too many of us for you to shoot, Skinner. And he yells, ha, I know a bluff when I hear it. And then he like peeks out the window and sees like an army of vampires. And then there's just a panel of his reaction. So this is a moment where they are just I mean, there's a little speech bubble saying sigh, but it's mostly just the art of his eyes. It's a close-up on his face of him reacting to be like, oh, it wasn't a bluff. Like, we were actually up shit's creek here.
So essentially those were concentrated salt bullets that they were using because of its saline. Yeah, I was eating those cookies my wife just bought me, and I couldn't comment, but those were good.
Professional.
I got hungry. What do you want?
Yeah. So, like, okay, what do we do here? And so Skinner basically has the idea of like, let's use whatever's here. Like, grab the thing we're here for. The George Washington whatever it is, and let's just grab whatever else we can. And they end up driving out the back of the train in a car. Hold on, they say later on whose car it was, some president's car. But they drive out the back of the train in a car, and they say, hey, Skinner, are you wearing Lincoln's hat? And he's like, I cannot tell a lie. No, this is mine. And I'm like, yeah, okay, very good.
That's good.
Yeah. So then it comes back to New York, and we have Poole and Travis like stalking down the subway looking for Dracula, because they think he's under Times Square. But Poole thinks he's specifically in an old VM base because there was an old laboratory down here back when the VMs were more active. And basically, these two characters are just sort of talking as they're going in here, and Poole talks about because Travis is like, wait, like how have you stuck out like this fight for so long? How have you possibly still believed in this fight given everything you've seen happen to people? And he basically talks about his brother. If you remember back to Poole's origin and stuff, like his brother was in the band that would tour, and his brother would like hunt vampires as they were touring in the band, but then his brother got killed, of course. But remembering his brother and his brother's commitment to it is kind of what's given him his commitment and his strength for it. But they're talking about this place was like a lab that was designed to figure out the weaknesses of vampires. So they used to have vampires like trapped here, and they just tried different things on them to see what would kill them. So pretty horrific. And you're part of what gets them, like Travis asking about how do you even stay in this fight. Kind of what prompts that is this idea that this was a lab that was back when the VMs would torture and kill any vampire species. It was before they realized that some were, like Poole or Pearl were potentially allies. So it's this idea that some maybe kind of innocent vampire creatures were killed or tortured here. And when they decided to abandon it, they just killed whoever they had that was there, but they didn't actually know how to kill some of them, so they had to just try a bunch more things really quickly. Anyway, that was all interesting lore stuff. It was kind of fascinating to hear him talk about that. Out of nowhere, though, Travis gets stabbed with the big claws from behind. Dracula is here, looking all monstrous and Nosferatu-like, and that's your big cliffhanger for that scene. Back to the other characters, they're still driving through the subway. It's basically just a fun car chase with, dodging and whatnot, shooting back to the other vampires who are also in cars, and eventually Skinner, again, it's played for kind of lighthearted comedy to an extent, but Skinner lights a stick of dynamite and just hands it to Pearl and says, wait until I tell you to throw it, and she's just kind of freaking out, but eventually, does throw it back, and they drive out the tunnel and go off the side of the mountain into the water, and it's the whole thing. So yeah, it's a fun sequence. It's really where all the fun of the issue comes from. But I think what I like about it from like a storytelling perspective is that so much of it is about Skinner, especially with his narration. But he's a character who's at the end of his time, right? He's an old man now, and he's reflecting, and he talks about how for a minute he felt like he was in the Old West again. But as soon as they hit the water and have to swim up, he realizes how much in pain he is and how those glory days are kind of gone, and he's kind of it feels like it's building up to him making a big sacrifice to be a hero. Because there's a bit where when they were still in the car where Pearl was asking, hey, did you really go to the Tongue, which is all the villainous vampires working for the Grey Trader, did you really go to the Tongue to try and get turned into something immortal again? And Skinner kind of dodges the question a bit, but then just kind of shrugs it off and says whatever they said is true, which makes it feel like he is lying still somehow. I suspect there's going to be a little bit more to that at some point down the line. But it all very much feels like it's from the perspective of him trying to feel useful, kind of enjoying the adventure again, but realizing that he's not the same old guy or the young guy anymore, or the immortal guy anymore. It feels like a reflective story of someone who's maybe realizing kind of some of the bad things that he's done in the past, and I don't know. There's an interesting quality here to it. That I think they're getting at. It goes back to New York after that, though, and Poole tries to shoot an arrow at Dracula. Dracula just catches it and then stabs Poole with it. So they're really in dire straits right now. And Dracula's like, hey, I was listening to you tell young Travis here about your brother, but you never finished the story about how he died. How he got killed in Sweet Alabama. How he ended up wasting away, everything he did meaning nothing, and he's just sort of and Travis tries to bite Dracula, says it tastes like shit. So and he's like, hey, you've been hunting my kind your whole life, blah blah. So it's just it's Dracula being like this superpowered monster, basically toying with them, and he's walking towards Travis, saying you're just an orphan boy, you're about to die, it all ends like this. And then the panel at the top of the next page is Dracula's head being decapitated. It comes clean off. A nice bit of art where the background's red and he's just kind of in silhouette. And there's this big, vampire monster there. It's not Pool, right? It's not Travis. Mm-hmm. And it's like, who is this? And I actually thought they were doing a thing here where they made me think both stories were at the same time, but this was set later and somehow Skinner became like a monster vampire again. It's not. It's someone else. But that's what I was thinking for a second because it had kind of long hair. But then there's like a sort of transformation back to like a more human form. And the final page is the reveal of who this is. And it's, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, but it's Mimite, who she says that she is the original American vampire. And this is a character who was in like the backstory stuff back in like the third or fourth arc, the Beast in the Cave stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say this is the Native American one, right?
Yeah, and like her backstory was that these vampires took her out on a hunt because she knew the land, and she got suspicious of them because they were sneaking out at night to do stuff, and she discovered there were vampires. And they bit her. The VMs came and killed all the vampires and also staked her, thinking she might be a vampire, so we can't take the risk. But she woke up the next morning because it mutated, like her vampire gene had mutated, and she is now saying she is the original American vampire. And of course, the whole, like, not the present day story, but the story of her in the cave is that she was locked in the cave away from civilization. And then Skinner, when he was fighting in the Civil War, or whatever it was, ended up in there with her. And I can't remember exactly how that played out, but like, because I actually went and just double checked who this was, because I'm like, what the hell? This is bringing back someone that I've not even thought about for like 40 issues, 50 issues at this point. So between Book coming back and now this character coming back, it feels like there's a lot of...
Feels like Snyder's tying everything into a bow.
Yeah, and she's strong enough to take out Dracula, which is a big deal.
America.
Yeah. Also, they talked about how Dracula picked this place is because a lot of the blood of all the vampires that were killed here has seeped into the walls and it covers his scent, so no one can find him down here because there's all these other vampire smells.
That's fair. So Travis done for?
I don't think so. I think he's just wounded. I think he was about to be done for, and then this save by Mimita.
So yeah. When you said it was the first American vampire, it clicked. And mind you, I haven't read this. I've just been going back through since you've been doing this for Patreon, and I remember the Beast in the Cave story, right? And that is a hell of a reveal.
Yeah, and it's kind of poetic that the first American vampire is a Native American. That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
thematically. So very cool. Sure. And that's the cliffhanger. That's the end of the issue. So. Yeah, big reveal. I like them exploring the tunnels and trying to find Dracula. That was super fun. The car chase stuff was a good time. But I particularly like it coming from Skinner's point of view, where he's still trying to prove that he's useful, that he's still trying to prove that he's still Skinner Sweet, and that he's not just this old man. I think that's like a real human part of his story that's kind of like landing here. So I'm curious to see where Snyder goes with that as this arc goes on. So probably a good 8.5 out of 10 for this issue if I'm rating it. And then that leads me to my other Patreon book, which is Batman and the Outsiders issue 20. So
curious to see what thing seems like it was ahead of the time now.
Oh yeah, for sure. So this is The Truth About Halo Part 2, which, Part 1 was like several issues ago, but it's actually worked out the way they've done it. This is kind of cool from a structure point of view. But so the last issue had the little epilogue that revealed that the sister of the guy that was with Violet, the person that Halo seems to be, was killed. So the sister went to Tobias Whale and said, hey, this Violet girl's still alive. So this issue is about her working with Tobias Whale's people to go... she meets Tobias Whale first in his car, and they kind of plot and whatnot. And they go to the house that Halo's parents live in, and she's there too, and the doorbell rings, and it's just Tobias Whale's henchmen all come in. They punch the dad, they've got a gun, they threaten them, and demand to speak to their daughter. And Halo, funnily enough, is having a dream where someone's stealing her face, and then she wakes up, and she goes, can Katana, or I shouldn't say, I think she said her name rather than her superhero name, but she's like, oh, Tatsu, things are, my dreams are getting worse, but it's actually Cyanide, who works for Tobias Whale, that's there to wake her up because the bad guys are in the house. So we got like a little like hostage situation for this issue. That's a really interesting little dream though, because I think it's kind of hinting maybe at the true like origin of who Halo is, because we learn a lot about Violet in this issue as to like what happened with the brother and what led to like why Tobias Whale wants her and all that, but it doesn't actually really answer if Halo just straight up is this person, or as I suspect, someone who took her body or her likeness after the fact. But yeah, so she's basically held captive. She does like have a little emergency button that she presses to possibly alert the outsiders. But basically, Tobias Whale wants something from her memory because there was like a chemical formula. Apparently, as he puts it at one point in this issue, it'll make heroin look like what was it he compared it to? It'll make heroin look like talcum powder or baby powder. Or something says. So basically, he wants the hot new drug.
Yeah, he's basically making super crack from
Super crack. Yeah, for Frankenhooker. Yeah, that super crack will get the job done much quicker. But Halo's like, I don't remember any of this. So they've got like an expert like there who like has truth serum and stuff and like drugs to keep her like weak so she can't fight back and whatnot. And like, yeah, she keeps saying, I don't remember any of this. I don't remember who this is. And Tobias Whale's convinced she knows. And I actually thought there was like a little bit of like a weird plot hole here, because I was thinking as she tells the story, or actually I should say, as both the sister and then Tobias Whale tell the story of what happened, it kind of by the end made me think, wait, why do they think she knows this formula? But they point out that it's because Violet had a photographic memory. So it's not so much that they knew she memorized it, it's more just that she naturally should have memorized it because she has the photographic memory. But basically, the button goes off and we see Batman get the message and he calls Geoforce. Geoforce like says bye to the girl in the hospital that tried to commit suicide, and says, hey, I need to go, but I'll be back, and you know, kisses her in the cheek and whatever. So that's kind of sweet. They're still following up in that. I love how serialized a lot of the book is, actually. It feels very ahead of its time in that sense. And you get like a cool little page where like you just see like Metamorpho, Katana, and Black Lightning like hearing the beeps of whatever's sending them the message, so they're all being alerted. But Geoforce flies off first because he can fly, and the rest are going to be like behind him as quickly as they can. So it goes back to the house. It's all like this race to get to the house to help Halo. She's in this predicament with Tobias Whale, and ultimately they like, okay, maybe we'll like make you remember if we tell you as much as we can about what happened. And so the sister, and then eventually Tobias Whale takes over the story when it sort of shifts to his perspective. But basically we find out that this girl's brother met Violet, and Violet was like was a bad apple always, right? She was always criminal. She basically seduced him and sort of made him forget his sister and had him start doing illegal things, made him run away from home with her. They found like a car that was on fire that had crashed, and they go up to like potentially help the man that's there, but Violet, instead of helping him, like just sees this folder that he's got with them, and it's this folder that's got a chemical formula for Tobias Whale in it, and she basically goes out of her way not to help this man who's in the fire. So like Violet was a monster, right? Like they present this as she stops her boyfriend from saving this man.
She straight up sucks.
Yeah. So like Halo was like shocked to hear this and says, no, I would never let someone die, never. And like the sister's like, yes, you did. Blah blah blah, right? So it's super shocking, and like Halo's like completely like I did, and like the art's like super shock face, panel backgrounds went red to show that it's like a moment of like horror for her, all that stuff, right? And then the story keeps continuing, and basically Halo, or sorry, I should say Violet, I shouldn't say Halo. Violet in the flashbacks wanted to extort Tobias Whale to get his formula back, says we'll sell you this back to you. If you pay us whatever amount of money, you can get your formula back. And Tobias Whale just tried to like sort of like find out who they were so they could have them killed or whatever. But they fled to Europe, maybe to find other potential buyers for this formula. So it goes through all this story. And apparently at some point, Violet just ditched the brother. Like the like Cyanide found the brother, and apparently Violet intentionally drugged him to try and like kill him to make it look like an accidental overdose. And Cyanide found him. Now, whether or not that's true or it's just Cyanide lying, I mean, who's to say? But she's Halo's yelling in present day saying, "No, I would never do that. That's horrific," right? But basically, Cyanide tracked her down, shot her with her poison, her darts, and confirmed the kill. That's the thing. Like this entire time, she's like, "No, she was definitely dead. I stripped her of her ID and walked away and left the body lying there. She was assassinated." Now, admittedly, maybe Tobias Whale should have told her not to kill her if he thought that her brain had the answers that he wanted. But that's another question for another day, I suppose. But it's like, no, she definitely died. I checked the body. She was gone. We don't know how you're back. And that's still a mystery. We don't actually know what happened after that. But the story of Violet is pretty rough. It's like, no, you let someone die and then intentionally seduce someone into your life and then kill them to get rid of them. Like, that is the events that have been described to us. So Halo finding all this is quite sad. It's around here where Geoforce actually shows up and like throws some punches, but he points out that he's quite weak because he flew here really quick, so he's actually quite drained. And the whip that
his
Cyanide...
arms are literally tired.
Oh, very funny. But Cyanide's got this whip that already not depowered, but like weakened Halo, and now it's weakening Geoforce. Luckily though, the outsiders show up here, and really cool little bit is that Black Lightning, because obviously Tobias Whale's connected to Black Lightning. Black Lightning says, "Oh, I knew I'd find you up to no good after you escaped from prison." And Batman's got a little thought bubble where he says, "Oh, good thinking, Black Lightning. That'll make him think we found him here because you were looking for him and not because we have any connection to Halo or these people." And I was like, okay, that's actually a smart little touch that they've addressed here. So of course the team is able to fight the bad guys here and take care of them fairly easily. A couple of really nice little character bits here that I like though is that before they go in, Katana's like, "If they hurt Halo, I am going to like slaughter them. Like they will like not be prepared for my wrath." And during the fight, sure enough, she's like, "You dare hurt this child," and she's like getting all intimidating on everyone. It's a whole thing. It's fun. Now, the heart of the issue though is that early on, when the bad guys first showed up and held the parents captive, and part of it was the parents were like, "Hey," the bad guys were like, "Hey, if you don't tell us what we want to know, we're going to hurt your parents." There's a little like whispering conversation between the parents, and this kind of like ties into some previous conversations they've had, where the dad clearly like has a low opinion of who Violet was and says to his wife, "Oh, she's never cared about us before. Why would she start now?" So he starts off thinking Violet's just going to like throw him under the bus because she doesn't care about them. And then by the end of the issue, because Halo keeps trying to protect them, he seems to sort of like change his mind and says, "Oh, maybe she has changed. Maybe she does actually care about us." And the tragic ending of this is that towards the end, when Halo is whipped up again, like tied up from Cyanide, Cyanide is pointing her dart gun at her again. She's going to potentially kill the same girl for the second time. And that's when her dad has picked up one of the guns, or maybe he owns a gun, and says, "Hey, get away from my daughter," which is a complete 180 from what he said earlier on. Cyanide fires her gun at the parents and kills both the parents. So we get this like thing towards the end where they've felt like their daughter has stuck up for them and they like her more again, or the dad does at least, because he was the one that was having mixed feelings. And then they die, and Halo has to like have the Wayne's moment where she's looking down at both these parents as they're dying, and with his dying words, the dad's saying, "Oh, I was wrong about you. I'm glad. I only wish you remembered us." And Halo says, "I do. I remember you now. I wish I'd remembered earlier. I'm so sorry, but I remember you." And I'm like, "Do you?" And there's a little scene here where Batman goes to like the chief of police in the town to like clear this up and like cover up what happened to keep it quiet. And there's just the reason why I'm even mentioning this scene is because the chief of police puts his hand in Batman's shoulders and says, "Yes, of course we'll keep this quiet. Us law enforcement men have to stick together, don't we?" And the art here is great because the way Batman just sort of looks down slightly at this guy's hand on his shoulder, like if he doesn't remove that hand, I am going to punch him in the face. Was just really good because he feels like a sleazy, corrupt cop. I don't know if they're going to go back to this. Maybe the corrupt cops are a part of the story that we're going to find out more about later with Halo or something. But yeah, we're at the gravesite. Halo's putting down the flowers for the two parents. She's crying. And Katana goes over. The others say she wants to be alone, but Katana says, I don't think she does. And Katana goes over to speak to her, to try and comfort her. And she basically reveals here that she doesn't remember who these people were, or that she was this Violet. She just said that to them as they were dying to give them that comfort, because that's all they wanted. They wanted to think that she'd remembered who they were, so she just lied to them. Halo does not remember any of this previous life, and it ends on this really cold moment of her walking away from the grave, which I thought was really good, because it still leaves it open for exactly who Halo is. I think there's going to be a sense of relief when she finds out that she isn't just this girl, that there is more to it than that. But what's funny about this though is that I think this almost like plays the audience a little bit in a cynical way, or not the writing cynical, but it almost lulls us into thinking, oh, how is Halo going to end up living with Katana again and being part of the Outsiders again? And it's like, oh, because we're going to find out it's not really her parents. But then they do the classic superhero thing where they kill her parents, and you're like, oh shit, like they've given her the tragedy, so now she has to go live with them because she's got nowhere else to go. And while that's technically true in the short term, I think there's going to be more to it later on as well. There's still more to explore here as to exactly, because as far as we know, they killed this girl. So how did she come back? That's still there to be answered. But the story of Violet up until that point has been fleshed out and answered. So this was really good actually, because it had the arc with the dad, where he went from saying, oh, she won't protect us because she's a little shit, to thinking, oh no, she does care about us, I'm going to try and protect her, and then dying for it and having the tragedy at the end. I thought was a really nice little arc in the issue. I thought it was some other good little character bits for Katana or Geoforce, because they were rushing to try and help her. And then just the backstory itself is so evil. Like this girl Violet was such a femme fatale who was just out for herself and would just like throw anyone else under the bus. Is just such a monster that you get why everyone else like thought of her this way, which is such a contrast to who Halo is, because Halo's such this sweet, innocent girl who's naive and doesn't understand the world yet. Yeah, so this is probably a good 9 out of 10. Honestly, it's a real capper to a lot of the things it's been building up to over the past several issues. So yeah, continue to enjoy Batman the Outsiders, and we'll see what's coming next time. Yeah, because it doesn't even say next time; it just says end. So this is clearly like the end of a chapter here, on a grand scale. So very, very cool. So apparently the next issue's got 3 stories in it. So I guess it's more of an anthology next time, but we'll see. So that is cool. That is Batman the Outsiders, which will bring us on to the final part of the show where we pick our favorite stuff of the week, favorite panel / moment, favorite cover, and favorite art. And top 5 books, obviously. So Matt, what is your panel / moment of the week?
All right, so it comes down here to there's Kilowog's return and Green Lantern. That was really good. Eula showing up in Silent Night. God, the Wound Man, anything with him and Dark Patterns, that's up there. But I'm gonna go for a more sentimental one, and that's gonna be there's this the full image of Superman showing Lois how to use her powers in the Superwoman special.
You're such a mark.
I am. It is a really nice, and I love how the image is composed. It's Čižmešija, if that's how we're saying it. But just the way that it's got Lois and Clark in the dead center, and just their poses, real good moment. So that's mine.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things to pick from this week, I would say. Wound Man's a really strong choice. It's hard to resist against that, but I do think there's some other moments worth considering. There is maybe 1 or 2 in that Superwoman special. I would also maybe argue for 1 or 2 of the sort of creepier moments from Batman and Robin, which is also doing some cool stuff. I'm going to pick, though, the page from the backup in action, where the brother and sister are represented with the space image of the sword going through both their skeletons. I thought that was just a really interesting piece of art that just stuck out in my mind. It was really symbolic. It just kind of caught me off guard, so I'm going to go with that. But very good. Cover of the week. I don't really have much to mention. Normally I have like a couple to mention in the pick. This week I just have a pick, which is Dark Patterns. I actually like both the main and the variant, but I'll go with the main for its simplicity, which is just like the Batman t-shirt coming on. It's just really simple and effective. And
Batman getting dressed.
Honestly, all the other books, like either the covers were messy because there was too much going on, or I didn't like the art styles or whatever. None of the other ones stuck out to me. What about you?
All right, so there's one from Action, and it's got Superman overlooking the world. I like that. Kate book's a little bit too long, though. But that one's decent. But mine's going to be the Batman and Robin main cover. And that's because it's got Batman and Robin, right, jumping over the city. But there's a skull, which is the Memento Mori symbol, right?
Okay.
In the ground on the bottom, so it makes like that pareidolia kind of vibe. So, yeah, that's my pick.
Yeah. All right. Art of the week.
This one's tough because it comes down to one of the Bat books for me. It's either Batman and Robin or it's Dark Patterns.
They were definitely the most coherent because all the other books, like Action and Superwoman, both had art changes.
Yep.
And Green Lantern, while Xermánico was very good, it didn't have like quite the memorable moments that he often does. Yeah, in the book. So I agree. It's between the Bat books.
So, man, they both had creepy stuff in them, right? I'm going to give it just a little bit more to Batman and Robin, just because of more of the horror elements. Yeah.
Yeah, tough to say. I think I'm going to lean the other way and say Dark Patterns, but it's very close.
Yeah.
It's very close. And while they're both like investigating murders, one's more supernatural and the other one's more just body horror, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right. Top 5 books, Matt.
All right, 1 is Dark Patterns, 2 is Batman and Robin, 3 is Superwoman Special, 4 is Green Lantern, and 5 is Silent Night.
Okay. 1 for me is Dark Patterns, 2 is Batman and Robin, 3 is probably Superwoman, then 4 is Green Lantern, 5 Action Comics. There you go. That's my picks. And I will tell you now what's coming out next week. Brace yourself for this, guys, because it's a long list.
Big deep breath.
So next week we have Absolute Batman issue 3, Nightwing 121, Batman Superman World's Finest 34, Action Comics 1080, Wonder Woman 16, Titans 18, Batman and Robin Year 1 issue 3, The New Gods issue 1, Catwoman 71, The Question All Along the Watchtower issue 2, Dark Knights of Steel All Winter issue 6, John Constantine Hellblazer Dead in America issue 11, Plastic Man No More issue 4, Green Lantern Green Arrow World's Finest Special issue 1, and that is by Jeremy Adams, so that might very well be important to the Green Lantern run. Batman 89 Echoes issue 5, Challengers of the Unknown issue 1, Batman Santa Claus The Silent Night Returns issue 4, Jenny Sparks issue 5, and then your normal assortment of well, actually no, there's also Milestone Universe The Shadow Cabinet issue 2. Sorry, I should mention that one. And then there's a bunch of facsimiles and your usual reprints and whatnot. So
also you should know that the Green Lantern Green Arrow book is art by Lucas Meyer.
That is worth making easy. Yeah, very good. So yeah, when I saw the amount of books out next week, I said there's no way I'm reading Silent Night next week. And to be honest, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking like the one that seems like the most of a chore, to be honest, is World's Finest. Now I think I'll still read it because we're so deep into it.
It's the Batgirl and Jimmy team up.
That's true. That does sound quite good. But just based on how I felt about the last couple of arcs of that, it's definitely the one that sticks out as being the most like less exciting, I guess, is what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but you got a new Ram V book, right? You're not reading Titans. You dropped Titans last time.
I dropped Titans, but that's not.
Yeah.
It's not. I've still, like even without Silent Night, I've still got like 12 books. That's insane. But like I said, I'll reiterate this now. This is important. Next week, the episode will not be out on Sunday as normal. It won't be out until Christmas Day, which is weird, I know, but
Happy Christmas.
Christmas season is awkward. The good news is that Matt should be back for the regular recording day for the following episode, so it should be back to normal for that in between Christmas and New Year episode, and then it should be fine from then on, more or less. But that's the hiccups. Plus, we're also planning our usual annual end of year awards episode, which will be slotted in somewhere soon. We've kind of tentatively talked about where it'll go, but that'll be coming up sometime at the end of the month or maybe early next month, depending on when we fit it in. So look forward to all that. So again, next week's episode will be like 3 days late. But Christmas time, so yeah,
3 days late, worth the wait.
But you do get to see Connor again for the first time in like forever. Unless he like cancels at the last second, and then I need to be like, hey Matt, you need to read 24 books for the next episode.
Funny.
The first ever 7-hour episode of Comics From The Multiverse.
Don't put that out there. If we have our own Mixapidalic, which might as well be Connor, that's what's gonna happen. So don't do that.
I often look at him and think imp.
Yeah. Look, out of any three of us, he's the one that's the closest.
Oh no, wait! Did I say imp? I meant gimp. Sorry.
Not touching that one with the 39.5 foot pole.
No, you'll touch it with a much shorter pole.
No, that's from the Grinch song, bud.
Oh dear. Anyway, yeah, that's the show, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. So yeah, Christmas season's a bit weird, but thank you for sticking with us and dealing with delays and whatnot. A lot of books to keep up with, and we'll try and cover as many of them as we possibly can going forward. Obviously, there's a few books ending in the next couple of weeks, so January should ease up a little bit, although it's definitely going to be much busier than it has been for the last 6 months up until the last few weeks, where it's really started to pep up a bit. But yeah, obviously you can support the show on Patreon. You can also gift memberships on Patreon now. If you want to buy someone a Patreon gift card, you can do that and send them a code. But
you still want to do that on the website, right? Not through the app.
Well, you can do it through the app as long as it's not on an Apple device.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's just Apple add a tax onto all the prices.
Yes.
So if you're signing up to Patreon, you can still use the app on Apple to access your Patreon and get the content or whatever. But you just sign up and set up the payment on a browser, on a computer, or a different phone or whatever.
Yeah, and that goes if you're joining memberships, changing your memberships to that type of stuff. Make sure you do it on a browser, not on the app. A lot of my shows that I listen to have had the same.
They're all saying the same thing because they're all
saying the same thing, and they're like, yeah. And if we have a free trial, use it through the app because we don't get anything from a free trial. But once that trial's over, come over to the website. Yeah.
Go check stuff out, and hopefully you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you guys next time. Keep reading DC, and of course Matt sniffs disgustingly right before the end of the show.
It got stuck. I
don't think you realize how much the mic picks up that guttural.
Nope.
Oh Jesus!
I don't. I thought I was doing it quietly.
This is why if the mic was closer and you turned it down more, anyway, doesn't matter. Anyway, Matt will one day learn how to record an episode of a show.
I'll call that bluff.
Maybe by episode 800 he'll figure it out. But anyway, thank you for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time. Keep reading DC Comics and never get lost in the Speed Force.